They're the end user. There's a contract in which O'Brien's is going to be paid. They are in charge of paying the SCT and GCT. That's the mindset of the Ministry of National Security. That bypassing the Ministry of National Security, direct representation is made to the Minister of Finance.
Okay.
Hold on. The Minister of Finance, in issuing this waiver, this moratorium, understanding that half of the money has been paid. Money was paid that is for the price of the vehicle plus the SET and duties. It's supposed to come out of this. The question is, by giving that moratorium, he's entertaining the argument that they may not be liable for SCT and GCT.
Okay, no, sir, I am not saying that, and I would appreciate a chance to complete my responses.
Pardon? Yes. No, let her complete her responses. Yes.
To the representatives.
No, remember, I have...
on this very small point, because I think we have been led away into believing. No, I'm saying we have been led to believe that these funds were actually placed in the hands of O'Brien's, or for that matter, whichever third party was involved. Those funds were actually being held by a third party institution and not actually placed in the hands of O'Brien's. And it is on the clearance of each part of it that those funds will be released in part to O'Brien's. That's my understanding, and so it may be important for us to establish exactly what was happening, because I don't believe the funds were actually placed in the hands of O'Brien's at all. It was placed in the hands of I can't remember the name of the institution.
All right, thank you, Mr. Camp. Ms. Morris, you had wanted to complete your response. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I am indicating that the Ministry of Finance is not saying that the Ministry of National Security had a responsibility to pay the taxes. We are not saying that. Although the moratorium was issued to the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Finance was clear that there was a bond supporting the contract, and that the Ministry of National Security could recover those funds, if necessary, from that bond.
Chairman,
She's
please.
assuming.
No, Chairman.
Chairman, the member from Trelawney has been...
Chairman, I would like to say something, and I really think it is important. Chairman? Chairman?
Yes, members. Member Dalrymple, please.
Yes, and I thank you, and I know what I'm going to say might not find favor with everybody, with very many people. But I've listened carefully. I listened to the questions last week. I listened to the answers. I've heard the acting financial secretary, who's been very clear in her points, and I heard the CEO for Customs, and they've been very clear. And this matter with the cars has had a lot of sensation. A lot of questions have been asked. They have been answered in the House of Parliament. They've been answered all over the place. And as far as I know, the matter it's not at an end, because the matter has now moved to the courts. And there is a determination that will be done by the courts. Well, there is a movement. We're not foolish to go in a particular direction. No. We asked the Ministry of Finance about something, and the ministry has sent some responses. And I go back to the fact that the moratorium is not a waiver of taxes, and that all that has been done by the ministry, by Customs, by everybody concerned, was weighed against the background of the contribution of these vehicles to assist in crime fighting. I know my colleague said that by the time the second round came, the murder rates were up, but even more reason for us to have the cars out there, because going up, you want it. And I'm saying to you, while we investigate, and as I said, there are a lot of questions and there have been a lot of answers. I think as members of parliament here, the idea is not to add or further sensationalize this whole issue, because the technocrats that have come before this PAC, including the ones here this morning, have been as open and as frank and as definitive as they can be. And I think that really, as parliamentarians, if, as a prayer that the member said this morning, if whatever we do in our discussions and investigations must endure to the benefit of the people we serve in this country. And I'm trying to pick up here now. Are we just creating news and more excitement, or what are we attaining going down and spending as much time as we do this one? Honestly, and I say so knowing that the matter has been aired, is being investigated, and in the response this morning, the minister has said, this financial secretary said, it's not a waiver of taxes. Somebody has to pay. There is a bond. Whether he got an extension because of whatever reason, the mobilizing factor was we needed to give the security forces the tools to fight crime. Customs did what they could to assist. The Ministry of Finance did what they could. The Ministry of National Security. And if there is something, we got a letter from the PS this morning. She says what she has said, and I'm sure the relevant people are going to follow it. I'm just concerned that we are just being over sensational and creating more than is necessary. My focus right now is to make sure here that taxpayers' monies are properly spent and that we serve the nation well. And I'm not sure. We had the Ministry of Security. We now have another ministry here. All the technocrats have been forthright, and we're going into some nitty-gritty. Last week that they couldn't go in, and I see the technocrats here this morning being as forthright, and they still can't dig in to where we're going. So if we have the answers, let's put them on the table and ask them, but let us remember that we are really serving the people, and I don't know that we're doing that by going down this thing this morning, honestly, because I hear clear answers.
Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
I remember, Stuart, you want to just make
just on that, because
before the point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'd asked a set of questions which
have not been. I recognize that.
Yeah, I just want to address that matter that my colleague just raised, because if it is not her concern on how it is that moratorium letters have been issued without any formal request being made, then, I mean, we would be, what is the sense of all of this? But if you talk about the importance of crime fighting on the matter, colleague, the second moratorium was for $34 million, 34.538. The ministry itself gave a variation of $42 million to the supplier. If it is that the issue of crime fighting was foremost on the mind of the Ministry of National Security, the variation is more than the moratorium letter. The vehicles could have come off on the wharf, and the ministry then accept the liability of the taxes to deal with crime fighting.
May I remind my colleague?
No,
May
but
I remind my colleague?
We need to look at that instead of coming and trying to think that we are trying to fish for
May
issues.
I remind my colleague very respectfully that there is a contract that exists between O'Brien's and the ministry and all the agencies. And therefore, what we are discussing here might have far more than we as parliamentarians understand, because there's contract law involved. We have not examined all the terms of the contract. We have not. And yes, and I'm saying to you now, and I want to say categorically, my colleague, I am saying categorically that I believe that the interest that surrounds all these cars, first and foremost, the interest of the security forces getting vehicles to fight crime was paramount. And I'm not hiding from that. And I hold to that. And I'm saying to you now, there's contract law involved. If there's something wrong, the chips must, as it will do, fall where it is. But let me tell you, the technocrats that came before us last week were forthright. We have asked the Ministry of Finance for something, and they have come back, and they have answered in a forthright manner. So they dig in, and so maybe it is that the members know something that we don't know. If it is so, don't dig, don't let us sensationalize.
All right, no, please, members. All right, no, Member Phillips. All right. No, please, members, with due respect, members, we're having deliberations. There are issues on the table over which that has given some disquiet, right? Various moratorium have been given. We're trying to seek to ascertain as an oversight body why this has happened and the sequence of events that has risen to occasion this. So that is a direct responsibility of this committee. I see no variation at all. And quite frankly, if we did not do this, we would not be doing our duty. So members, please, I think one of the things we need to do is to allow the financial secretary. There were some questions posed. Can we just proceed and allow her to answer? She has been pleading to be allowed to answer incomplete. Member Campbell, yes.
A caution, though. I noticed that my friend asked two questions which may lead us down the wrong path, the answers to which may. In relation to the specific terms of the contract, which I believe are going to be subject to litigation, and it may very well be on that road right now. And if those questions are answered, it may prejudice the determination of those issues by the court. And additionally, my friend, Member Jackson, asked a question in relation to what was available to the other members of the bidding party. That, I believe, is subject to investigation by another entity which has the statutory authority to do it. That is in relation to the fairness procedure and what obtained in the whole bidding process. That is the Office of the Contractor General. And I certainly wouldn't want us to go down that route and prejudice any investigation.
I'm not certain which route you want to go down, Member Campbell. I think you'd prefer not to go any. I'm just making.
I'm just thinking. What answers are given here is certainly not subject to cross-examination and all that kind of thing. And when you appear before the Contractor General, you're sworn to make statements which are subject to the truth and for which you can be prosecuted and all.
I'm sure the financial sector knows the boundaries within which he can answer. FS, you have been pleading for. I will ensure to give you protection this time.
Well, let me see if I can respond. hopefully to everything that was in fact asked. The tender document that was issued by the Ministry of National Security indicated that taxes should be included in the bids.
Wait, sorry, could you speak into
Sorry, the tender
I tell you what,
document.
Ms. Folks, just turn on yours as well and turn it that way so that she has the flexibility.
The tender documents that were issued by the Ministry of National Security clearly indicated that all taxes and duties should have been included in the bid. The actual contract, I'm just going to read a short section. The actual contract with O'Brien's says, for goods manufactured outside the procuring entity's country, the supplier shall be entirely responsible for all taxes, stamp duties, license fees, and other such levels imposed outside the procuring entity's country. As far as the Ministry of Finance is concerned, it was clear that the supplier was responsible. And therefore, we are not saying that by issuing the moratorium to the Ministry of National Security, that the Ministry of National Security had the end responsibility for those payments.
Well,
as indicated in our response to the questions, it was expected that this would have been addressed through the bond.
So Ms. Morrison.
And sir, if I may
yes,
just say in relation to the bond,
Yeah.
it was an irrevocable bond. It means somebody is now in breach, the demand having been made and the bond not having been immediately paid over.
All right, absolutely. No, one second, Madam. So the point that really comes up out of this, if there was a bond, irrevocable bond in place so that half of the money was paid, if in your mind there is no doubt about who is liable for the SET and GCT, it comes back to us as a committee. What could have occasioned the issuing of a moratorium on the payment of that SET and duties?
The effort to get the vehicles to the Jamaica Constabulary Force as quickly as possible.
Because the money had been paid up front, member. There's money on a bond already there. The vehicles are here. They pay the duties and collect the money for the vehicles. In issuing the moratorium, there must be some other rationale. And what kind of troubles me, member, and you're a member of the ministry, is that in getting a moratorium, there usually is a paper trail that justifies the decision. The financial sector says there is no records in the ministry of this, number one. And number two, that it might have been some verbal conversation with the minister. That's not how governments are run, minister. So I'm just saying there is reason for concern. Remember?
From what you read, it was expressly stated that the duties, applicable duties, is the responsibility of the supplier. Now, yes, outside the jurisdiction. In this contract it is. In this, yes. Madam PS, Madam FS, for the importation of motor vehicle in Jamaica, there are two sets of duties. One that everybody else pay and one that government pay. Was there anywhere in the contract it stated that the duties to be applied would be that afforded government imports?
All right, we're checking. But the government would have issued some time ago a circular or a document that indicated when the government became subject to
Specifically, Chairman, what I'd want answered, and I believe...
No, I'm not clear here.
that
June 1,
No,
2015.
no, she was talking at the same time. So I wasn't
Okay.
hearing.
Okay,
No,
effective.
she never finished.
Yeah, just effective.
Members, one second. Let me just clarify where we are. So,
Yes.
Member Jackson, you had wanted to clarify something on this point.
Yes.
So I'm allowing that.
That clarification.
Member Campbell is asking to clarify something on the point you are clarifying. But
Oh.
I would like you to know that Member Stewart has been patiently,
Yes.
he had
Yes.
indicated to him. So please be
No.
brief in your clarifications. You'll get
for
another
Member
chance.
Campbell.
No, you wait.
No, my clarification is that the PS read that the supplier was responsible for the applicable duty. But in the instant case where the motor vehicles is for the government, if they, was it expressly stated or implied which of the duties they are, in other words, would the supplier be granted or permitted to import these vehicles at the duty rate afforded for government imports or duties otherwise obtained, or taxes otherwise payable?
Okay, so the actual 5% is not written in the document. However, it did say if any tax exemptions, reductions, allowances, or privileges may be available to the supplier in the procuring entity's country, the procuring entity shall use best efforts to enable the supplier to benefit from any such tax savings to the maximum allowable extent. The 5% that we refer to is the customs duty that is applicable for government entities.
Oh, it's not the general one. This is
right.
this is
It is.
already
Right.
lowest.
This is what is applicable, and that is public knowledge.
So for clarification, I just want to understand this clearly, Mr. Chairman. If the ministry was importing the vehicle, then the 5% would apply. Any other person importing?
Not on behalf of the ministry.
Not on behalf. If
If they are importing in their own right, then
in
it
their
is
own
not
right.
applicable.
And in this case, they were importing in their own right.
No.
No.
They weren't
They were importing for the ministry.
for the ministry. So it is the 5% that would apply.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Now, on that note.
No, member, please. No, member. You had wanted some clarification? Good. No, I have member.
No.
Sure.
Just to complete the clarification point, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
The 5% that applies in the case, to your knowledge or the best of your knowledge, FS, that information was provided in the tender documents for which the contractor would have.
No, it would not have specifically said 5%. It would only have spoken to the applicable, what would be the applicable duties. So, actually, if there was going to be an error, it should have been an error of 20% being applied instead of 5. If we are suggesting the 5 was not originally known, so the bid should have come in with 20% in there rather than the 5.
Okay, so out of the 5, instead of the 5, it would have been 20.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So you're saying that the taxes that would normally have been applicable on these vehicles is how much?
20%.
20%.
Yes.
But
The
it was-
customs duty.
The
That is
customs
just
duty.
in relation to customs duty. The GCT and SCT would also.
But a special
normal.
consideration was given in this?
No.
This is
For government. For government.
Because the name on it was Ministry of National Security. Understood. Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair.
No, you were clarifying. If you had forgotten.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. It's been quite a while. You know, Chair, one great philosopher once said, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when at first we try to deceive." It's a pity that I'm not blaming the committee here, but I'm saying it's a pity, Chair, that we did not allow the Ministry of National Security to be here, all three bodies, Customs, Ministry of Finance, to see the clarity that we want here today. This is not the first time that we are importing vehicles into the island. And I believe that there is a policy document somewhere in the ministry that would lead to the way vehicles are imported for the public bodies. Why was there a diversion at this time? And may I ask, as it relates to the 66 vehicles, where are we now with them?
Okay, there is no diversion from policy. How a particular contract may have been executed does not translate to a diversion from policy. The tender document was in line with policy. The contract is also appears to be in line from what we see right now. In terms of the 66 vehicles that you're referring to, what we got the Ministry of Finance from the supplier was a reference to 68 vehicles. Those 68 vehicles, just also respond to your previous question, remember, the 68 vehicles were additional to the 30. That 68 did not include the 30. So those were additional, and the value for the taxes associated with those that we were provided with value for the SET and the GCT was the 34 million plus. In terms of where we are with those vehicles, to the best. Okay, I'll pass to Customs.
The Jamaica Customs Agency is not in receipt of any import declaration for the 66 vehicle with a designation or a reference to the Ministry of National Security for final duty payment. No. What we have that is still not yet finalized is 29 vehicles, import declarations that are in the system but have not yet been finalized, meaning duties have been paid. And
no, sorry, just for clarity. There's 30 vehicles in the front and
so those 30 vehicles would have gone.
So yes. Those 30, you're clear on that?
Yeah, those are clear.
The 68, you only have on record how many?
As per the moratorium regarding that amount, the agency have on record in our import declaration system 29 in the system, but not yet finalized, meaning customs duties and taxes have not been paid as yet. So it therefore means that those vehicles would not be cleared. They're still there.
Just to clarify, sir.
I'm not clear. There are 30 vehicles that were the first transaction.
That was in June.
And then there is another set of vehicles now.
Sir.
And you're saying of those vehicles, how many are on the wharf?
No, well,
Okay.
well, I can't speak to what is on the wharf. I can only tell you what they have submitted declaration for. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
She has gotten for 29.
Yes.
So it is not that we are saying that there are only 29.
Yes.
Right.
So you customs would only be aware of, at this time of 29 vehicles on the wharf, not 66 or 68.
29 vehicles that have been declared to us.
Yes.
Because not necessarily on the wharf, 29 vehicles that have been declared to the agency for the Ministry of National Security.
Members, if I may, let me just, I think we're jumping back and forth. Yes. We had gotten to a certain point in the chronology. Yes. Let us sort of go through. We had reached a point that in June, the letter granting a moratorium was issued by the Financial Secretary on behalf of the Ministry. At that point, those 30 vehicles were released.
Yes, sir.
By customs. All right? Now, when they were released, you released it based on a letter from the Ministry of Finance. Am I correct?
All right. So the agency would have received from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service the moratorium for the Ministry of National Security. An agreement was done between the two entities, the Jamaica Customs Agency and the Ministry of National Security.
Right.
For the amount of $9,219,125.45.
To be paid
representing when? SCT and GCT on the 30 motor vehicles.
So was it to be paid when?
Pardon?
This was to be paid when?
A deposit was taken of $1.25 million and a balance of $7,968,069.
Who paid that deposit?
So the deposit was paid over, I'm not sure who paid the deposit, but it was paid over when it was between O'Brien and the Ministry of National. When the declaration was being paid, when the declaration was submitted, the deposit was paid. I will have to go further, interrogate the system as to say exactly. But we received a deposit of $1,250,000 and $68.88, resulting in a balance of $7,969 and $56.57 remaining. Now, the 30 vehicles were released from bond to the Ministry of National Security.
So who at that point would have been liable?
Pardon?
Who would have been liable to you?
Well, the agreement was signed between Customs and the Ministry of National Security.
Okay.
Yes.
For what period of time?
The 1 month period, sir.
So you were expecting payment by July?
Yes.
And did you receive payment?
No, we didn't.
And did you have any follow-up discussions?
Yes, there were follow-up letters and emails sent to the ministry
and
requesting that the payment be made.
Could so you were, and what response were you getting?
Okay. So we had emails sent in to the ministry, 2 emails.
To whom? Who did you send them to?
To the Director of Procurement.
That's Mr. Morrison?
Yes. And then a letter was sent also to the Director of Procurement indicating the reminder for the monies to be paid, the outstanding balance. We actually received a response from the PS outlining that reference is made to your letter in relation to the caption.
This is when did you get this?
This letter came to us December 8th.
When?
December 8th.
No, but
because
we
would have been sending reminders.
But this would be after the second. I'm talking about the period now.
Yeah.
Between June, you had July, August, September, October, November, December. This period of time, the vehicles are on the road. Your Customs, you have issued, you have given a moratorium. Yeah. You expect payment in July. So you're writing and you're saying the first response you got was in December?
We had email communication before. We had email communication, but notwithstanding that.
But did you get a reply from them prior to that?
There was a response from the ministry prior.
What did they say?
Which one was that now? That they were speaking to their accounts unit on the matter, to resolve the matter. So
the impression you would get from that is that the Ministry of National Security was seeking to pay it?
Well, based on what was sent to us, yes.
If I may?
Yes, sure.
The deposit that was made in June, it was not made by the Ministry of National Security. So I would assume that it was O'Brien's who made the deposit. Certainly not.
We're speaking about 3 different, you have the duty of 5%, the SET and the GCT. Was the 5% duty in which the supplier had already accepted that he's liable for that, was that paid on the 30 vehicles?
The deposit, just let me check about this thing.
No, that would have been in relation to the SET, BCT. Thing didn't include the moratorium as well as the SET and GCT.
1 second. right, so this it is this. It is 4, and that is, yeah, this and that. Okay. All right, so the 5% would have been paid.
The 5%
Yes,
duty
it
would have been paid in
yes.
total.
Yes.
So that 1.4 million you spoke about?
Yes,
That's a while ago?
1.2.
1.2.
Yeah.
That would have been now paid against the SCT and the GCT?
Against the 9 million. Yes.
Against the 9 million?
Right.
And that would have been paid by, as Mrs. Morrison said, would have been paid by the supplier.
Based on the fact that the Ministry of National Security did not pay it,
You would
that
assume
must
that
have
it
been the
was.
supplier.
But
Mrs. Ricketts Walker, let us go through the process. So you said you received a letter between that period of June. Could you just say when it was, indicating that Ministry of National Security was seeking clarity from the Accounts Department? Is that correct?
I'm not sure if it was in June.
Not June.
No, I said after June. I'm trying to get the date from you, just to get a chronological.
This is it? It's actually November.
Sorry. Yes, you have the date.
Sir, that would be in November.
November.
Yes.
All right. Now, just to follow through, Ms. Morrison, during the period leading up to November, a letter was written to the Ministry of Finance and Public Service from the Ministry of National Security seeking clarification and with regards to this issue. Do you have a copy of that letter?
Sorry, I'm not sure about clarification. I know
Yes.
we received a letter, which one of the things it requested was a waiver.
Do you have a
Sorry,
copy
let me see if I
of
can,
that letter?
Let me see if I can identify it. No, this is us. This is Dola. Yes.
Do you think would you like me to read it, or can you read that letter first, please?
Okay, I can read it. All right, so this is a letter from the Ministry of National Security to the Ministry of Finance in October 2017. It says, in January of this year, the Ministry of National Security, via competitive bidding process, awarded a contract to O'Brien's Car Sales and Rentals Limited to supply 200 pre-owned motor vehicles, 80 Toyota Corolla Axio sedans, and 120 Toyota Hilux 4x4 double cab pickups. To date, the ministry has only received 30 vehicles, Toyota Corolla Axio, notwithstanding that a 90-day extension, effective June 6, 2017 to September 4, 2017, was granted to the contractor for delivery of all the vehicles. In letters dated August 25, 2017 and October 25, 2017, O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rentals Limited wrote to the ministry requesting that the general consumption tax and special consumption tax being charged by the Jamaica Customs Agency on the vehicles be waived, as they are unable to absorb these costs. They have also indicated that these costs were not factored into their bid. The ministry recently wrote to the contractor advising that it is their obligation to pay the relevant duties and taxes associated with the clearance of the vehicles. Notwithstanding, in keeping with the terms of the contract, the ministry is seeking to facilitate and assist the process as best as possible regarding any tax exemptions, reductions, allowances, or privileges that may be available to the contractor in this situation, as over 50 vehicles which are urgently needed by the Jamaica Constabulary Force to assist in crime fighting, including the zones of special operations, are now sitting on the wharf. Enclosed is a copy of the letter dated October 25, 2017 from O'Brien's Car Sales and Rentals Limited, giving detailed costing for the SCT and GCT taxes in the sum of $16,265,202.35.
Could you just repeat that last line?
It says, enclosed is a copy of the letter dated October 25, 2017 from O'Brien's Car Sales and Rentals Limited, giving detailed costing for the SCT and GCT taxes in the sum of $16,265,402.35. The SCT and GCT costs for the remaining vehicles are not yet available and will be provided as soon as they are received. In light of the above, the Ministry of National Security is seeking a waiver of the above-mentioned taxes, as it is imperative that the vehicles are delivered to the JCF for deployment within the shortest possible time, given that the need for patrol vehicles has been identified as mission critical at this time.
So they wrote to you seeking a waiver, and you replied?
The reply was that we were not
do you
able
have
to
the reply?
grant. Oh, you want the entire reply?
I think we have seen. You have a copy of the reply?
Yes.
Could you? And this was dated when?
The reply or the
reply?
letter. The reply is dated November 2, 2017.
November 2nd,
Yes.
2000. Yeah. Could you repeat? Could you read the reply?
All right. The reply says, reference is made to your letter dated October 27, 2017, seeking a waiver of the special consumption tax and general consumption tax payable on 50 Toyota Corolla motor vehicles being purchased by the Ministry of National Security for use by the Jamaica Constabulary Force. This serves to advise you that effective June 1, 2014, government purchases are subject to the payment of GCT. Additionally, the following should be noted. The government of Jamaica, in conjunction with the International Monetary Fund, has embarked on a program of drastically reducing discretionary waivers. To facilitate this policy, the Charities Act and the Charities Act and the Fiscal Incentives Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2013 were created, and all requests that were formally addressed by the use of the discretionary power of the minister are now under the provisions of these legislations. Under the current arrangement, with the fund, discretionary power of the Honorable Minister is capped at 10 million Jamaican dollars monthly, thus making waiver requests such as yours difficult to address under these circumstances. The Ministry of National Security, while subject to the payment of import duties at the rate of 5% and payment of the SCT and GCT on the vehicles, can make a claim to the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service for a refund of the GCT paid. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service recognizes the significant impact the acquisition of these vehicles will have on the operations of the JCF, and hopes that both the JCF and the Ministry of National Security and Justice will appreciate the context in which the request is not supported.
This was signed by?
It was signed by Mrs. Fawkes, the DFS tax policy. I would just like to note, though, that that last paragraph was in error. What had obtained prior to this fiscal year with the introduction of the payment of GCT by the government is that the Ministry of Finance had retained the funds in the ministry and were paying on behalf of the entities. But we resolved the matter and they are now with the entities, so that was an error coming from the previous period.
There was a further letter to them from your ministry after that, in which you sought to give them a timeline by which to call on the bond if the vehicles were not, no such.
All right.
There was no further.
I'm not aware of another letter, sir.
All right. And so that is November the 2nd. And
November the 2nd.
So the next communication was, when did we have our meeting? The next communication would have been on the 29th, when was it? The next communication with the Ministry of National Security was a second moratorium.
Right, so the communication on the moratorium itself would have been to Customs. The letter goes to the Customs agency.
Yeah,
yes, it's
to Customs.
to them.
And now, for clarity, there are two things I think we need to get. Number one, you had a 3-month, the Ministry of National Security indicated that they thought they had a 3-month moratorium, whereas we have been told first moratorium in June. I know, but the letter that the Ministry of National Security wrote to Customs that was just read out to us, they had indicated that there was a 3-month moratorium, so there's obviously some confusion there. But be that as it may, the moratorium had run out. The second moratorium, did it encompass everything? The 30 plus the 60, or what happened to the first moratorium if it was not embodied in the whole thing?
Right, so the first moratorium was not paid out as it should have been in line with the moratorium. We have been in dialogue with the Ministry of National Security, and the understanding at this point was that as soon as they received the bond, which has been demanded, that the remainder on the moratorium would be paid out. On the second moratorium, because it did not proceed to an agreement between Customs Agency and the Ministry of National Security, and therefore it is at this point null and void. It was never effected.
All right, just for our clarity, the second moratorium, if you have it there in front of you, in our, just looking at it, in our opinion, seem to have shifted the responsibility on the Ministry of National Security to pay by a due period of time rather than the importer dealer.
Mr. Chairman, if the second moratorium is null and void, I mean, why are we pursuing whose responsibility is not in effect? It's null and void.
Yeah.
Chairman, if I might just interrupt on that point. I know I said it earlier about us investigating and being as sensational as we are, but, Chairman, let me wait for your attention. I just went outside, and it happened last week. I know that the function of the PAC is for government to act and taxpayers to get their money's worth. We again, after we have gone nearly 2.5 hours, we have again the NWA people outside, and I think it is the local government. So if we intend to investigate and continue along this trend, I think that we have a duty as members of Parliament to indicate to them that they can go back to their offices, because they're sitting there. They are government officers. They can't function, and I say this against the background that the two ministries that are here for the second time are ministries that are vital to all of us as taxpayers, because the rains are going on, the roads are destroyed, everything is going up a lot. So that is why I made the original point. Not that I don't want, but we have aired this whole thing. The technocrats have been as frank and as they can be with the information. Are we going to move on, or are we going to have local, the local government people and NWA, instead of being functional and helping us, stand outside? So if we're going on, I'm just asking the chairman to use his best office to see what we're going to do with them, because it's in the interest of taxpayers not to have them sitting out there.
Absolutely. Member Dalrymple, both Member Campbell and Member Holness had indicated to me earlier that when they came, and I had indicated to both of them just to round robin with the members, and it was my understanding that. So I'm just trying to determine. Of course, it is up to the
majority is that we close,
right,
Chairman, and allow NAA, because I don't think we would want to send them away either and call them back a third time. In addition to which, Chairman, if there are members who feel that we should be able to continue for 2, 3, 4 hours speaking to the various ministries, I personally have no objection. What I do believe we should do is either we have one ministry per PAC meeting, or we schedule them. So the first ministry comes, and the second one comes 3 hours later, and the one after that 3 hours later. It would be better, because then they would be able to continue to do their work, and we who have nothing else to do, this is our most critical job. To be here, we can spend the 9 hours here, while the other members of government work in their various ministries and capacities. And if we're at a place where we're finished or we realize we're closing off, then half an hour before, we can place a call to say, NAA, come down now. Local government, come down now. But I believe seeing them coming week after week and sitting out in the lobby week after week and then being turned away to come back the following week, member, it's a waste of our resources inside our various ministries of our critical civil servants. And I am convinced a frustration for them. So we have some housekeeping requirements here.
Member Holness, I know you were not here at the beginning of the last meeting. No, please. And just to let you know that we had indicated to NAA to come at 11:30 and to give it time. That's number one. Number two, it's very hard to judge how long the deliberations will go on with any one ministry. But I do agree, and member, I'm just suggesting that amongst ourselves, we put it to discussion every week, who we should invite, and there's a consensus. I don't think, I don't think you were here at the end of the meeting when it was discussed. I think today at the end of this meeting, we could all have a discussion about how to proceed, and as a committee make those determinations. I think we're all of one mind with it. Members, there's a consensus. I feel that we would like them to stay. What we can do is attempt, if possible, to wrap up. Let me just ask if there are any other questions. You would like to? Go ahead, member.
Just to Mrs. Ricketts Walker.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure what they. I'm sorry, member, but what exactly is the decision? Because they're. So they're staying. So they're both staying, or is it one is expected to stay?
To be very honest with you, I think that we should allow members, okay. That's a good discussion. Yeah. I don't know that we going to get NAA and RADA.
Well, RADA.
Sorry,
I thought it was local.
No, local government.
Local government, but I thought it was about the road program.
The package. So you take all of it together.
We can take them together.
Do members agree with that?
Yes.
I just want to make sure there's consensus.
Yeah, man, you're not a dictator.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Much as I try.
Mr. Chairman, all right, so just one final thing. When I was coming in.
So we could say to them, you have 15 minutes, what would we say to them?
Right, because when I was coming in, you could hear them grumbling. I mean, and rightly so. Let me not use the word grumbling. You could hear them expressing concerns.
We're hoping allow me to ask a question, we can finish and get out of here.
Go ahead.
So, I wasn't clear, Madam. What was the applicable duty, the 5% duty on the first 30 vehicles? What was the applicable duty on the microphone?
Okay, I was saying that I don't have the specific amount as it relates to the 5%.
Look,
I can certainly get that for you, though.
Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out if that 1.2 million that you said that was paid over, if that wasn't the amount paid over for the 5% duty and not towards the SCT and the GCT. That's what I'm trying to ascertain.
All right, we will check that and send
because
in the information.
The reason being, she said that the 5% was paid, but there's an additional one. I have the impression that there's an additional 1.2. So it would be good to know what the applicable. All right, simple. On the, you said that on the emails or the letter from the Ministry of National Security, in their response to you, did they make a commitment in paying the SCT and GCT that would have been applicable in the first moratorium letter?
The response stated that they will be querying their unit and to give us further response on the payment. And the second response was relating to that the PS had indicated she had acknowledged receipt and that she will respond more fulsomely in the coming weeks.
And have you gotten that response in the coming weeks? No, you have not. All right, you said what date was that last? That was December
8th.
8th. On the same day, December 8th, there were 4 vehicles that the ministry took possession of, the Ministry of National Security, that I understand was in the bonded storage for O'Brien's. Can you tell me if the 5% duty have been paid on those vehicles, or any of the SCT or GCT paid on those vehicles?
No, I'm not aware of what you're talking about. I'll have to go and check the records for that. But you're talking specifically about another set of vehicles. 4
vehicles, yes.
Right.
Which
may not be a part of the moratorium that we're talking about. It has nothing to do with the moratorium.
They would have gotten receipt of 30 vehicles, which would have taken care of.
So you're talking about
an additional
another
4 vehicles.
Right. Which would be another business arrangement between O'Brien.
The Ministry of Finance is aware that the Ministry of National Security has received an additional 4 vehicles.
4 vehicles.
We are having it checked as to whether those were 4 vehicles from the 68 that we were advised of.
In our last meeting, the Ministry of Finance of National Security said, yes, what is due to them is 62 vehicles. Yes. So if it is that it was taken out of this bonded area, as would have applied to the first 30, that the supplier himself would have at least paid the 5%. I'm trying to ascertain then if the 5% was paid on those 4 vehicles or any of the SCT or GCT paid on them. Because if not, it makes, seeing that, no, but the moratorium was also withdrawn by then, yes.
Right. There's no moratorium in relation to the 68.
That's my point.
And therefore,
so on what basis then would they would have they would have wanted the vehicles, but
we would need to do some checks. I'm saying we cannot at this point definitively say if those 4 vehicles came from that batch of 68 that was indicated to us.
Okay, check on the duty that was paid.
No, go again. I didn't. You check if they are part of.
If they came from the 68 that was indicated to the Ministry of Finance.
But even if it wasn't a part of the 68 and he had them in his bonded, but
we don't know. We, the Ministry of Finance and Customs, at this point cannot tell you that. So I'm going to do some checks.
Chairman would
could have come from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you will just conjoin the question with Customs as to the duty.
If the duty was paid on those the custom duties. Just a final question. Earlier, I didn't get Chairman, especially to do with the first moratorium. I understand that Ms. Morrison had said that she has no documentation on if a formal request was made from the ministry or anyone. It could be verbal on the first moratorium. But last week, I was trying to determine, which is why we asked the Ministry of Finance to come. If I'm to, or some clarity from you first. When the letter, the moratorium on the 23rd would have gone to customs, would it be normal for the Ministry of National Security, who is now accepting the liability in this moratorium, to be also notified that a moratorium letter is being issued to customs?
So normally,
Chair, can you just turn off your microphone? You can try it again.
Normally, a moratorium request would have come from the relevant institution to whom the moratorium is being issued.
Yes.
And therefore, even though it goes to customs, they would have been notified.
Right, and which I found odd, that the moratorium letter was dated on the 23rd. Huh? But on the 29th, when the PS came here, because you would have on November 2, would have declined a request from Ministry for a waiver or moratorium,
no, it was
just a waiver. Yeah? So no request for a moratorium was then made from the Ministry of National Security.
No.
So again, like the first one, before you answer, the letter was dated on the 23rd, the moratorium letter, which then the PS came here on the 29th, saying that the only communication she got about the clearing of the vehicles was from customs, that they had received a moratorium letter to initiate the clearing of the vehicles. So I found it strange,
very strange,
that 6 days before that the letter was dated, that the Ministry of National Security would not have been notified of the instructions now being given. Yeah?
Right, so that would have been...
Right? No, I'm allowing, no, I was just answering. Yes.
That would have been out of line with our normal operations.
That would have
Could you please?
Out of line with the normal operations.
would have been out of line.
Where
and that's
the
why
person to whom or institution to whom the moratorium is issued was not notified.
And that's why, Madam FS, I don't want to call it bandulo, or I don't want to say that it is, because it is out of line, because if no written request was made for the first moratorium, Chairman, and one was issued and accepted by the Ministry of National Security, a second one was issued, and no request was made by the Ministry of National Security.
I think the question, I think, Ms. Morrison, what the member is getting at is who made the request
Who made the
for
request?
the second one.
Right,
By that time you were there.
I'm trying to answer.
Okay, sorry.
Was one made
Yes,
of you? No.
there was a request. There is a request for the second
Made by
moratorium.
whom?
It was made by O'Brien's.
It was made by O'Brien's.
And it was made to whom?
To the minister.
To the minister, because his signature on it.
And the minister, despite the fact that the first moratorium still was outstanding, and despite the payments were still outstanding, and despite the advice received from the technocrats that the O'Brien's was responsible for the SCT and GCT, despite all of that, a second moratorium was issued. Do you, again, within the ministry, do you have sort of any, the justification when these things are issued? Is there any justification written for these things?
On this one, I don't have a justification. I have the request and I have the moratorium.
Chair.
The request and the approval by the minister. That's
Yes.
Chairman, I am going to end right now. I'm just going to say that this, as we have always been saying, has been a messy affair. I think it's a bitter taste of bandulism, because if no request was made officially by the Ministry of National Security, and the minister allows a first moratorium which the ministry has to take liability, the PS herself, as I read in a letter, said that this is a one-off situation. I am hoping and praying that no other transaction goes on in this manner. And this is where we are talking about the minister overstepping his boundary. And I will not take that back. Because if a request was made by the supplier straight to the minister and no communication made, and one was issued, and it's only because of public pressure why it was withdrawn. And it would have gone through, and the Ministry of National Security would have then accepted, because the PS herself came here and was adamant that she was not going to accept. And she's culpable in this by setting the precedents, by accepting the first. And I'm sure that request of her accepting the first came from both the Minister of National Security and Minister of Finance.
So, just in wrapping.
But you can't just say these things and you don't have proof of them. You can't just say it.
Chairman. This is inflammatory. And, you know, I think we have to be careful. Are we making a finding? Because my friend is going down a line, because, and saying it loud, it does not make it true. I'm saying we have to make a finding. Has this committee made a finding that there is corruption or the minister has exceeded his authority?
And also,
I think it's unfair. It is unwise of this committee to be going down that route. And my friend does it religiously.
All right, Ms. Morrison. Members,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
I'm about to wrap up.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, just one thing, because I think that there are ways to get points across in a far more efficient way, and there's nothing that was said from that side which suggested to me that any moratorium would have gone through or was going through, and but for some supervening.
The minister signed the moratorium. But
I'm not hearing from them. I'm not hearing from them that the moratorium would have gone through or was about to go through.
The moratorium went through. The minister signed the first one, the vehicles came, and he signed the second one.
The second moratorium.
He signed it. It was issued. Customs received it.
Was it going through? Was it going through? Because as far as I was told, it was withdrawn. Was it going through? Was there any? Can they answer over there? Because I don't shout.
No.
Was it going through? Was it going through? Was it through the door? What was happening with it? I think that needs to be clarified.
One second, please. No, members, please.
Let's not
go. No, members, please. I'm coming to you. Ms. Morrison, there was a point made by Member Terrelong that the minister issued the second moratorium. Am I correct from what I'm picking up, that was rescinded?
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, it has not been rescinded from the ministry. However, because there has been no agreement with the person or the institution named, then it is not in effect.
So my question goes back to Ms. Ricketts Walker. You're saying, how many vehicles have we received as a country up to this point in time? How many vehicles have been cleared so far by our brands, total? No, total. I just want to know.
Right.
Add them up and let me know.
No, and I can only speak with regards to the first moratorium, 30 vehicles.
Good. How many have been cleared on the second?
It was not effected. The second moratorium
So all we have received up to now are 30 vehicles are on the road.
Sorry, sir. If I may, we need to distinguish between the moratorium, when we are speaking to cleared in relation to moratorium, or just cleared in relation to the Ministry of National Security contract?
No, I'm speaking to O'Brien's.
And O'Brien's. So we need to check, as indicated, with respect to the second set of 68. We know that the ministry has 4 vehicles, but we don't know whether it came from that batch of 68. So that is what I was indicating. We would check on and let you know.
Okay. And
right, so if they did in fact come from that 68, we do know for a fact that the moratorium would not have been in effect, and therefore it couldn't have been under the moratorium.
And if the 5% has been paid, you are going to check.
Right, and if the 5% has been paid.
A summary statement?
A summary statement, you know, in my understanding, I want to clearly understand if the Minister of Finance is not in his remit through the Ministry of Finance to allow anyone who writes requesting a delay, and I'm going to use this word for the public, a delay or a moratorium in the payment of my taxes for whatever it is, all right? Whether or not the Minister of Finance exceeds his authority when a Jamaican citizen writes and asks, can you give me a delay or time to pay my taxes for whatever the situation is? It is something that I need to clearly understand.
Okay, so the authority for issuing a moratorium lies with the minister with responsibility for finance. Yes.
So member, so let me ask you a question.
Right.
Yeah, but member,
So
I think what gives us
Can we just
concern,
get the words, please,
member,
so he
no,
is
please,
within his
member
rights.
Terlang, hold on, please. I think what gives us concern is a moratorium was issued in June for 1 month. After a month, it still was not paid. It was to be paid in July. You go August, September, October, no payments made. In November, a request is made for a waiver, which is denied, reiterating that the dealer is to pay the duties. And then, despite not getting payment on the moratorium from June, the minister issues a second moratorium in November. You know, member, if that doesn't give you cause for concern, nothing will. All right, members, I don't know. I'm about to wrap up. We have a contract
Mr.
with
Chair,
the roads.
Please remember, the Ministry of National Security is here. Remember at our last meeting, we were advised that the ministry was seeking advice from the Attorney General's office regarding the contract. Remember, what was the term used? The partial termination of the contract and what the course of action would be. It would be useful if the committee could be advised if whether or not it's still a partial termination or not. Though I'm very unfamiliar with that term, which is akin to partial pregnancy.
Well, unfortunately, our legal team members. Right, I was saying that our legal team member is not here, but as far as I'm aware, the contract it is still our intention for it to be terminated in part, meaning that the vehicles that are currently on the wharf, we still want to take possession of those, but for the others that are to come, we're no longer interested.
Oh, but Mr. I'm confused by that because last week you said that there were from a meeting, I think on December 12th or 13th, purchase orders were issued for those vehicles. Therefore, it would not be under the contract for the 66. What would be by a separate purchasing arrangement by those purchase orders. Wouldn't that be the case?
Yeah, a purchase order was issued to facilitate the clearance of those that are now on the wharf.
To facilitate the clearance?
To facilitate the clearance, yes.
So the contract is not partially finished then? You're still using the contract to get those?
Partially finished, partially terminated in the sense that the balance of vehicles that are not here
outside of the
island,
60s?
Right. We're no longer interested in going ahead with those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just one clarity from my memory, I think is failing me a little bit, but just let me know, the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Finance, did you receive any other correspondence from them regarding O'Brien's in the end of October, November, the payment and of the SCT and GCT from them?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So the only discussions you had on it had to do with later in November when you had the discussion on the moratorium and the initial ones to the payment of the first one.
Yeah, that is correct.
Good. All right, members. I don't know if there's anything else. All right. Well, let me thank the Ministry of Finance and Public Service and CEO of Customs for coming today. I think we have gotten some clarity to this affair, and we're just hoping now that we will see, you know, what the result of this would be, because it looks to me that this thing is far from over at this point in time. Because I don't know if the vehicles, what's happening with the clearance of the vehicles. So thank you for coming, and thank you.
Wednesday, January 24. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. In his address to the House of Representatives Tuesday, National Security Minister Robert Montague said that the St. James state of emergency is not a cure-all for all the country's security problems.
It is meant to cauterize the situation while providing the space for other sustainable interventions. Let me remind this honorable House that it took us decades to get here, and it will not be addressed overnight.
He further added that there is a significant level of consensus that sustainable crime reduction will require fundamental changes along with significant investments in our social and educational systems. The minister used the opportunity to explain that of the 197 people taken into custody so far, 10 are on the country's most wanted list, and 83 are connected to gangs. He explained that there are currently 178 individuals still in custody, and some of them are the subject of further investigations.
We are committed to providing these inputs over time. Mr. Speaker, we are aware that criminal elements will attempt to flee St. James to neighboring parishes. As such, a number of operations are being conducted across the island in support of the state of emergency. These operations are in an effort to apprehend wanted men who may have eluded the main area of operations.
The security minister also mentioned the discovery of a number of devil-worshipping altars by the security forces in sections of the island. Minister Montague said that the discovery of devil-worshipping altars is a most dangerous trend, and the clergy is also disturbed by the occurrence. The tourism minister, Edmund Bartlett, says industry players in St. James are satisfied with the numbers of visitor arrival despite the state of emergency in the parish. Jamaica is in the second month of the winter tourist season, which is one of the peak periods of the sector for visitor arrivals. Minister Bartlett says preliminary results are not showing any negative fallout.
The truth is that all the attractions are open and have visitors at the moment. The beaches are also there with visitors, and visitors are in their hotels operating.
In the meantime, he is appealing to the media to be mindful of their narrative about the security operation in...
This is a different type of operation. This is all about cauterizing and enabling normalcy to be restored. And we think that the effect of that is going to be to make the destination safer, to make the experience more seamless. And that's what I'm about. We are about making Jamaica safer, more secure, and seamless.
Time is running out for persons who have not yet collected compensation for losses incurred during the May 2010 Security Forces operation in West Kingston. Justice Minister Delroy Chuck on Tuesday disclosed that more than 100 people are yet to make collections.
As of January 12, 2018, the Ministry of Justice has paid a total sum of $178,381,835.69 to some 270 claimants directly and a further 29 to the Administrator General. As such, the balance of $21,618,164.31 is to be paid to the remaining 148 claimants. These 148 claimants, Mr. Speaker, must come forward and provide their banking information promptly, as any amount not disbursed at the end of 2018, March 2018, will revert to the Consolidated Fund.
The West Kingston Compensation Committee recommended that $199.1 million be allocated to cover all claims. Some 447 recommendations were made for monetary compensation. 26 of the 34 children who were displaced when a fire destroyed the Walker's place of safety on January 15 are back in school. They returned Monday. 8 children are on remand and not in an educational institution. State Minister for Youth Floyd Green says some of the children are still traumatized and are receiving continued counseling. Meanwhile, he has high praises for both public and private donors who have given support since the fire at the facility. He says already there have been several entities that have volunteered to help with the rebuilding of the home, which will feature modern-day amenities. He says a determination is to be made on whether to rebuild Walker's place of safety at its previous location on Lyndhurst Crescent in St. Andrew, or move the facility to a government-owned property. If the trend continues, 2018 may end up being another bloody year on the nation's roads, as 22 people have been killed in 18 fatal crashes since the start of this year. The recent traffic crash update from the Ministry of Transport's Road Safety Unit shows passengers have accounted for the most deaths between January 1 and January 22. 8 passengers have died. Motorcyclists have accounted for 6 deaths. Pedestrians accounted for 2. 3 private vehicle drivers have been killed since the start of the year, while 4 private vehicle passengers have died. Of the total, 20 males have died. Fatal crashes have decreased by 18%, while fatalities remain constant when compared with the similar period in 2017. Fatalities for 2018 are projected to decrease by 1% when compared to last year. The National Water Commission is breaking new ground in water testing on the island with the implementation of a major 3-year water resources assessment and sustainability project in Kingston and St. Andrew. The project is being done in collaboration with the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. According to the NWC, the project, an assessment of Kingston Hydraulic Basin, is aimed at strengthening the water management institutional capacity and will facilitate and inform the development of strategic and mitigating plans for projecting the water supply, that's protecting the water supply sources in the basin. Under the IAEA-funded project, the NWC has invited the involvement of other key water sector players, including the Water Resources Authority, National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, the Ministry of Health, and academic institutions like the University of the West Indies, the UWI. The project also involves participants using nuclear technology, stable isotopes, to develop maps that show the characteristics of the water. In regional news, Venezuela's ruling Constituent Assembly says presidential elections will be held by the end of April, pulling forward an election in which President Nicolas Maduro hopes to triumph over a divided opposition and win a second term. The 55-year-old Maduro, who was Hugo Chávez's hand-picked successor, says he is ready if he receives the party's nomination. Maduro, who assumed power in April 2013 after Chávez died in office from cancer, has yet to be formally nominated by his party. In sports, we're on the track with athletics. 2016 World and Olympic champion Omar McLeod says he's likely to miss the Commonwealth Games in Australia in April. He says the Games are too close to the World Indoor Championships in Birmingham, England from March 1 to 4, where he plans to defend his indoor title. The timing, he said, doesn't give him enough of an opportunity to prepare for a trip to Australia less than a month later. As a consequence, his coach, Edric Florel, wants him to focus on defending his title in Birmingham. The 23-year-old, who was named the National Sportsman of the Year, opened his season last week with a time of 7.53 seconds in the 60 meters hurdle in Lexington, Kentucky. And still in athletics, Racers Track Club sprinter Zarnell Hughes was held up at gunpoint in an attempted robbery at the University of the West Indies Usain Bolt track in Mona, St. Andrew, Tuesday evening as he prepared for a practice session. He told reporters that he was putting on his sneakers when a man just came up pointing a gun at him. He asked for his phone and Hughes ran. The man opened fire. It is reported that a licensed firearm holder who was at the venue returned the fire. No one was injured in the ordeal. And that's the news. Do stay with us. The weather report is next. This is PBCJ's weather report. Thanks so much for staying with us. Let's start with a look at the forecast for Kingston. In Kingston this afternoon, we're seeing a temperature at 29 degrees Celsius. We're also seeing a forecast of sunny skies and cloudy conditions in certain areas. We're seeing that we could get some rainfall this evening as sun sets at 6:33 p.m. Over there in Montego Bay, St. James, we're seeing a warm afternoon, 27 degrees Celsius. We're seeing forecasts of some cloudy conditions in the afternoon going into this evening. We're seeing that the temperature is set to go down to a cool 7 degrees Celsius. Across the island today, we can expect some rainfall over there in Port Antonio and Maypen, as well as Black River, St. Elizabeth as well. We're seeing cloudy conditions for several areas. We're also seeing temperatures between 27 and 32 degrees Celsius, with Black River scoring the highest temperature forecast for today. In our forecast for tomorrow across the island, we can expect temperatures between 27 and 31 degrees Celsius. We can expect rainfall in the southern end of the island, cloudy conditions in the hilly inland areas, but it should be pretty sunny over there in Montego Bay as well as Negril. In our forecast today across the Caribbean, you can expect rainfall over there in Havana, Cuba. We're seeing rainfall over there in Santo Domingo, but it should be pretty sunny out in Antigua. We're seeing cloudy conditions, but sunny skies in Nassau, Bahamas. In our forecast for tomorrow, temperatures between 22 and 28 degrees Celsius across the Caribbean region. We're also seeing scattered showers, so there's going to be a weather condition moving across the Caribbean tomorrow going into the next day. We're also seeing cloudy conditions forecast for Nassau, Bahamas. Let's take a look at our travel planner. We're looking at the United States. If you're planning to travel tomorrow, you can expect sunny skies in Los Angeles, Miami, and as well in New York, but it's going to be pretty chilly out in New York. Even though we're expecting some cloudy conditions and some sunshine, we're seeing a minimum temperature -4 degrees, max 0 degrees temperature for New York. We're seeing sunny skies over there in Atlanta. We're seeing a maximum temperature of 12 degrees in Atlanta, a high 23 degrees over there in Miami. And that's it for the weather report. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.
Welcome back to Family Fortunes. If you're watching a PG-13 show and your little brother enters the room, what should you do? Run him out! I would find a G-rated show because G is good for everybody. Yes. Final question. What does A stand for?
First letter of the alphabet. Phone a friend.
Wagwan Chargy is what A stand for. Well, PG is parental guidance, G is general audience, and A is adults only. Adult.
Until next time, follow the ratings.
Broadcasting Commission, your partner for a new day.
All right, members, let us reconvene. It is now 2 minutes to 1, so we're going to try and move as quickly as possible. The Minister of Finance indicated in the supplementary that he was going to apportion approximately an additional amount of approximately $2 billion to the rehabilitation of roads. This was a supplementary budget, so our committee has been asked to look at, or our responsibility would be to look at how this $2 billion is going to be spent. It had been indicated that some of the funds would go to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation through the NWA. A second amount would go to the Ministry of Local Government, and a portion of it would go to the Ministry of Agriculture for farm roads through RADA. We had a discussion at the last meeting that the Ministry of Agriculture has some additional information, and we had a discussion with them for some other points, so the decision was taken to put off the examination of the roads that fall under RADA to the point where we can have that discussion with them. So we're hoping to take Ministry of Agriculture next week with RADA and the farm roads and that portion of this $2 billion that falls within that. So today we have Mrs. Henry Martin, who is here from the Ministry of Local Government. You are the new Permanent Secretary. Congratulations. And we have Ms. Doreen Prendergast, who is taking the lead, as you're the CTD at the, yes, Ms. You know, for the CTD. I'm going to give both Ms. Henry Martin and Ms. Prendergast an opportunity to introduce her team, although I would say that certainly the CEO of NWA, Mr. E.G. Hunter, has frequent flyer miles at this committee and needs no introduction, along with his team, Varden and Mr. Patterson. But I would allow Ms. Henry, I'll start. Let me start with Ms. Henry Martin, please, and then I would have Ms. Prendergast just introduce her teams, and then we'll take it from there.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members, and also colleagues from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. It is my pleasure to introduce to you my team this afternoon. Mr. Rupert Price to my immediate left, who is the Director, Parochial Revenue Fund, and Mr. Dwight Wilson, who is the Senior Director, Technical Services. Immediately behind me is Mr. Junior Rose, who is the Senior Director, Strategic Planning, Policy and Monitoring. And beside him is Mrs. Anisha Gordon-McFarlane, the Principal Finance Officer. And immediately beside her is Mrs. Joan Thomas-Levy, who is the Senior Director, Acting Agency Liaison and Monitoring.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. As the chairman mentioned, my name is Doreen Prendergast, and I'm one of the Chief Technical Directors in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. I wish to extend apologies on behalf of my Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Audrey Sewell, who is unavoidably absent. The other members of my team are Ms. Monique Gibbs, Senior Director, Strategic Planning and Evaluation, and you indicate as I call your name, and Mrs. Judith Robb Walters, Principal Finance Officer. In terms of the NWA, we have with us Mr. E.G. Hunter, the CEO, who is no stranger to you. Mr. Varden Downer, the Director, Regional Implementation and Special Projects. Mrs. Pauline Dunstan, Director, Finance and Accounts. Mr. Earl Patterson, Senior Director, Implementation. and Mr. Roger Smith, Director, Technical Services. I also want to welcome my colleague counterparts from the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development. Thank you.
Okay, I think to start, whether Ms. Henry Martin and Ms. Prendergast, who could just sort of give us a breakdown, $2 billion, who gets what, so that we can at least start from there?
I will, sir. $150 million of the sum allocated in the supplementary estimate is for the Ministry of Local Government. $1.35 billion is for the Works Agency to utilize, and $320 million goes to the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's maybe if we can start with local government, maybe we can get it out of the way and see where we're at. Yes.
I'm just seeking a clarification because this arises from the supplementary estimates, and it is a further allocation based on the 2017-18. So I'm assuming that the allocation that was there for 2017-18 has been exhausted, done, and spent, and that is additional amounts for the same period. Can we just get that clarification?
Yes, the sum that was allocated previously has been exhausted.
How much was that again?
Well, for example, for emergency repair it was $54 million.
I'll allow Mr. Hunter to tell you exactly what the sum is.
The clarification you seek, Member Paulwell, I have a copy here of the supplementary. And specific to the $2 billion, there was no previous vote on, for this head. It's called Repair to Roads. There was no previous vote.
So just to clarify.
What you have prior to this would be the mid-P, I suspect.
Yeah, right.
All right, so what was that amount that was spent prior to this?
Or allocated.
Allocated. Yes.
I was just referring to, this is an extract from the supplementary budget itself, and it doesn't show an allocation on the repairs to roads. It doesn't.
So nothing would have been spent on roads apart from the...
Oh, there were other programs.
Right.
Yeah, but different categories.
So I'm just trying to get an idea as to what was spent on roads prior to the supplementary estimates.
Oh, that's...
You don't have it with you. You know
Well,
what
for
your
example,
budget, I
under
think
the-
he just wants to know what the budget was, total on
Well,
roads.
speaking for the NAA, the mid-P program, for example, the budgetary allocation was 16 billion for the financial year. 16 billion, yes. And that's
how much of that has been spent?
The total expenditure for this financial year of that 16 billion.
Well, total or percentage sort of thing.
And I was stumbling in answering you with the speed that we normally do, member, arises from the fact that the invitation to this sitting specifically said we would be questioned on this and this subject only.
That's true. I'm just trying to contextualize this discussion. But yes, you're quite right.
But
we still would like to have an idea, though, of the 16 billion. How much is...
That information can be provided.
Can be provided. I don't want to give
I think I've gotten, and certainly if they could provide that, and they certainly roll in the mitigation, so at least we know the context of what this 2 million represents within the context of it. All right, yes. Right, so we were going to just start with local government, if we may. The allocation is 150 million. So what we're seeking is clarity on where this will be spent, how the decision process is made. Where have you reached so far with regard to that?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. $150 million amounts to a percentage of a total of $1.3 billion that was previously requested as at May after the heavy rains. And since December into January, we are seeing an increase in estimates in the amount of 200 million to date. In other words, sir, there's a very high call on what is required to be spent. Essentially, therefore, we are presently looking on the priority areas because 150 of the total that is required is a very, well, to use your word, a drop in the bucket. And at this time, we are in collaboration with the local authorities based on their advice to determine based on safety factors, areas where roads have been cut off, impact on communities and so on, the priority areas to determine how we could best allocate this 150 million. And we expect to have this as at the end of this week.
All right, so two things. Again, similar question. You said that you have, similar to what Member Paul made, just the context. You have approximately, you have a need for over $1 billion worth of work to be done on parish council roads. However, how much did you get? How much do you have in your budget for road work at this point in time for the budget year that we're in, 2017-18?
We had received nothing, sir. There was
nothing.
Nothing.
So all the funds that go into parochial, all the other things, and that go to the parish councils, none of this go to fixing roads? PRF, I'm just saying, yeah. But she's saying there's no funds allocated. I'm just trying to get clarity, remember.
Mr. Chair, of the funding received from central government, because we were speaking specifically to that, we had, usually we would get $19 million.
19?
Right. That was not forthcoming. 19.
But how much is the PRF? How much does that amount to each year?
In terms of what was allocated?
No, just like, isn't that the fund that you have? That's your sort of capital. You have a discretionary amount that you can use.
It's about $3 billion per annum, sir.
And do you invite or ask the parish councils to spend some percentage of that on capital projects such as roads?
All of it normally goes to the parish council for roads, except for the amount that is put aside for the equalization fund. Everything else goes to the council.
Well, that's what we're trying to ascertain. But we're just taking it in the context to see there's a need for over $1 billion worth of road work to be done on local government roads.
From central government, but the local government has its dedicated fund that goes specifically for road repairs. And an amount is sent to each parish council every month in that respect. And a portion is kept at the ministry in the equalization fund. And the parish council can also, by virtue of
of requests. Requests from the equalization fund, a particular amount, if the needs arises and when the needs arises.
Yeah, so I think the point that we're trying to make here, member, is that the PS has said that there is a real need for road work to be done, that there's over $1 billion worth of almost emergency work coming out of the rains and etc. that needs to be done. She has indicated that there's no money coming from the central government other than the $150 million.
That is the $150 million.
Yes. And she had made the point of dropping the bucket.
Yes, so, but they can go to the equalization fund.
But that's what, so the question we had asked is, out of the equalization fund, the $3 billion, is there some of that that you expect to be earmarked towards the fixing of these roads?
Mr. Chairman, based on the question asked, we would need to look
give
at
some
that.
more information.
Right. But to just confirm that, in fact, 20% of the is normally retained for road maintenance.
So that would be an additional 200 million. Hold on, that would be an additional, well, 20% of 3 billion would be about 600 million, roughly,
No.
if my maths is correct.
Please hold on, sir.
Okay, Member Paula.
Chairman, there is a relationship between the Ministry of Local Government and the parish councils, obviously. And the parish councils are spending funds on local roads. So I'm trying to ascertain now, this 150, who will determine which roads these are, and in relation to the parish councils, how much are they spending on local roads, if you're aware? And those funds are specifically from the what? PRF. Right, the PRF.
Sir, the 150 million, based on the intent to spend, will have to be in consultation and upon the advice of the local authorities. Right. Any other request of the Honorable House would have to look to review in order to provide the request that you have asked.
Yes, but because there is a list of parish council roads. 150 million will be spent on those roads. The parish councils, from that same list, every month they make allocations. Is there a systematic approach to this so that we're aware of what these roads are, how much you are spending, how they're apportioned, and by what mechanism, and also from the parish councils, do we know what roads they are dealing with and the total amount of funds that they'll be spending on these roads?
Yes, this is why the review is necessary based on what would have already taken place and based on the progress reports we would have attained, and also in terms of what we now intend to spend. So that review has to be done on a systematic basis in order to determine the priorities.
All right, members, I don't know that we are going to be able to go very far with this discussion. What the PS has indicated is that they have received 150 million, and by the end of this week they will have an idea of how those funds will be apportioned, and to certainly we would want to review that to determine, you know, whether there's some parity in it going out to the various parish councils, etc. So what we would ask is that the Ministry of Local Government give us the list of, you know, next week, once they have made the decision this week, if they could give us a list of how those funds are to be spent so we can send it out to members. I would also ask if you could let us know the funding available for parish councils, whether through, I think there are two, the equalization fund and the parochial fund, and what percentage of this goes to roads. I think what we all want to as members of parliament know, is a portion of this going to fix roads for the members? If there's $1.2, $1.3 billion worth of roads to be fixed based on the rains, etc., where is it coming from? What is a portion, so that we can make a proper report to Parliament? So we would ask you to just let us know the status of the Equalization Fund, Parochial Fund to date, how much is being spent on the roads, so that we can get a good idea of what the need is going forward. And if you can give us that information, we'll circulate it to members. And if there are questions arising out of that, we can request the Ministry of Local Government to come back and address those issues as they arise. I don't know if there's any other clarity that we need today. Yes, Member.
Yeah, just to say that the National Works Agency has the authority, in cases of emergency and so on, to work on any road. And in that respect, a number of the parish council roads are being addressed as we speak by the National Works Agency.
Okay, well, when we get to them, we will hear about that. That will be very interesting. But members, with your permission, if there's nothing else for the Ministry of Local Government, I would give them leave to depart so they can go about their work and not be detained. Certainly they can stay and listen to the procedures if they so desire, but if they, we're always happy to have you, but if you would like to go, certainly. Man, thank you. All right, okay, yes, Miss Prendergast. So back to you and certainly to Mr. Hunter. I think you're saying that there's 1.35 billion of this program is NWA.
Yes, sir.
And certainly if you can give us some idea, some breakdown, some information on how the selection process goes about.
Mr. Chairman, please allow me to ask the CEO of the NWA to take you through their work program.
Absolutely.
Right,
and yes, so Mr. Hunter, I turn it over.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. Again, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. This is a relatively simple program and process, I hope. And as indicated previously, this program has its genesis in the almost continuous rains that have visited the island for most of 2017, and which has wreaked havoc on our network of roads. So we're very thankful for the $1.35 billion, which has been entrusted to the NWA for expenditure. We had circulated the program last week. There are 3 additions to the program and a few corrections. We had, for example, a road which is actually in MP Bunton's constituency. We had it listed to be in Mr. Stewart's constituency, right? And he called me and threatened me, so I adjusted it. I can now say that Mr. Stewart, Mr. Stewart is now represented. Mr. Stewart is now officially represented on the program with the Swaby Hope Road at $15 million. Equally, we did hear from Member Phillips. Now, I'm not suggesting that, having heard from an MP there suddenly, but we heard the lamentation. Absolutely. So we have added Greenvale to Spurtree to gutters on the program as well, which happens to be in Member Phillips's constituency at $20 million. And there is the White Shop to Frankfield at $20 million, which I understand is in Member Azan's constituency. All told, Chairman, we intend to do work on 166 roads across the country. Almost every constituency is represented on the program. However, let me hasten to add that that's what you call a happy coincidence, because this program is not a constituency-driven program. It's an event-driven program, the event being the rain event. That is the motivation and the impact that the rain events have had on the road network. So let me repeat, it's not a constituency-driven program, it's an event-driven program. And different areas of the country would have had different impacts. And what we tried to do was to respond to the event. The total expenditure, Chairman, is supposed to be $1.35 billion. Those funds have to be expended on or before the 31st of March. So that is one caveat. The second caveat is that these funds are to be expended in strict conformance with the government of Jamaica's procurement guidelines. I'm sure that by the time I get through the door, the contractor general will be waiting outside asking for everything on this program. And what it means is that we have to get on with the program, get on the ground with this program now, and we have to be able to cleverly package the program in such a way that we can do the procurement, do the analysis. We're going to be using limited tender in most instances. Do the analysis, recommend or select the contractor, and get the work on the ground so that we can spend this money by on or before the 31st of March. To assist in that process, we have already asked MPs to assist us in some of the groundwork. But let me be very clear again, just for the records, these are NAA contract, and in the final analysis, the NAA has the final word in terms of the contracting. The contractors are chosen from the approved list, the NCC list, in the appropriate grade. We will take inputs from MPs to the extent that that is useful to our purpose, but at the end of the day, we are the ones that will have to speak to the efficacy of the process, and we certainly intend to orchestrate the process in strict conformance with the rules of engagement, as we all know. As you know, there are some parallel programs going on as well. There's the Christmas patching program, which complements this. So this program is not a program in isolation. I have the statistics on the Christmas patching program. It's not going as fast as we'd like. I think we're just up to about 15%. Again, 15% total. I have a list. I know the delinquent MPs, and what we're trying to do, as you know, in accordance with the Prime Minister's letter in December, we're asking MPs to support our effort. But as I've
just for clarity, would that be payout, the patching program? Would that be payout, or would that be work done?
Work done. Work done. Now, again, let me be very candid on this. Those funds have to be spent by the 31st of March. I have no intention of sending those funds back to the Ministry of Finance. And so if a point comes and we have not gotten the feedback from the field and the support on the ground, we will take an executive decision in terms of what is to be done. Yeah. Okay. And finally, of all the roads that we're doing, just for information, 85% of the roads are NAA roads, and about 15% are parish council roads. But we take the view that the local roads do support.
Repeat that. How much percent?
85% are strictly NAA roads. 15% are local government roads. We take the view that those local government roads are supportive of the NAA's network, and so it makes sense for us to do those work. And final point, I remember some years ago at a session here, Member Fitzjackson made what I call the Fitzjackson Declaration. I just make the point that although a road is in a particular constituency, it wanted to be understood that the benefit to the population is not confined just to the constituents. Yeah. So yeah. So Member Jackson, more of his constituents use Marcus Garvey Drive than people who live in West Kingston. So the point is, yeah, okay. So I thought I'd make that point because a lot of MPs think, yeah. A lot of MPs say that unless a road work has been done in their constituency, there's no benefit to their constituents. Yeah.
I shall remind Member Jackson of that. So, I'm sure
it's
later in this
conversation. Declaration. I have it written down. So, Chairman, that's in essence, that's what our program is about.
Member Paulwell and Member Stewart.
Yeah. Chairman, I have two questions. One is an observation on the list, because Mr. Hunter mentioned that these roads are provoked by the rainfall, and the rain did fall on everybody's houses.
But in very different impact.
Yes. And it's just an observation and tabulated, and I'm not trying to be partisan here, but it is a bit glaring that when you look at two-thirds of the roads, they do fall on some houses that are palpably green. And then 1/3 you see on another side. Just an observation. And in particular, I note in the corporate area that the rainfall was more rural than, yes. So I was expecting to see the member from East Rural St. Andrew getting more, but when I look at Northwest St. Andrew, I see almost $100 million for Northwest on the flats. On the flats.
Northwest St. Andrew?
Our colleague who has just resigned. So I know he would have made strenuous representation.
Member Paul, are you saying there seems to be a trend taking place?
Yes, it reminds me of St. Mary recently.
Chairman,
I need to finish. I need to finish the point. I do need to finish the point. So I think that observation is quite glaring, and would love to hear from them on that. But there's a second matter. Because every time we have rain, the roads are mash up. There must be a way to solve this problem once and for all. Now, I have seen where cement has been used in a number of areas with heavy rainfall, and the devastation is not nearly as much. Where are we with the research in how to maximize the spend and have regard to our climate situation? How are we going to make sure that the roads can withstand rainfall, which is a natural occurrence everywhere in the world, right? So if we could address the two issues.
Mr. Chairman, before NWA answers, I think for the member,
clarification?
well, just to say for the member to just look at the dollar figure and declare that it's skewed towards JLP MPs versus PNP without overlaying on that the magnitude of the damage to roads or the length of the roads. It's an unfair statement. It's a very unfair statement.
He did make it in that context, Member Williams. Anyway, please,
okay,
could you allow the member? Could you allow Member Holness finds herself in a contradictory position, trying to defend on one hand.
I'm never going to try and defend anything more than East Rural getting more money for more roads. I hope at no point do we come here and argue. If I'm so lucky So I will keep representing.
You want to take some out of Member Smith's constituency?
I will take some out of Member Paulwell.
Mr. Hunter, please.
Let me speak, and I speak entirely from a professional perspective. When the rain events visited us, this is a report that was prepared by the NWA and forms the basis of a cabinet submission where we asked for money to respond to the rain events. And this report catalogs the roads that were impacted by the rain. You see, and I can circulate this report. And so the cabinet submission asking for funds had its genesis in this report. Yeah? And it lists some 300 roads island-wide that were impacted and which were cleared. Now,
could you just let us know, and the total cost of that, if all roads were to be fixed, was how much?
Oh, at the time, our estimate of the damage to the roadwork, to the network then was close to $2.something billion just for cleanup.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, so the work itself.
Yeah. So let me just put it in context. The estimated damage was about $2.5 billion just to clear the landslides and the inundation and so on. We wanted $300 million to rapidly repair some bridges that were compromised. And I requested $400 million from the government to do patching of roads that were badly scoured. So that was the essence. This is the genesis of the program, okay? If you examine the supplementary estimates, you will see where we were provided with money to do the cleanup. We have been provided with money to deal with the bridges. We did.
Where is that? No, I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's object.
In which?
This is a supplementary estimate. If you look at head 19,000, object 600, it says emergency repair to roads, and there's a provision of 1.17 billion.
Right.
That's in the supplementary estimate.
The House voted. Yeah, that's, hold on, yeah, separate from this?
Yes, yes. So,
do we have a breakdown of that?
This is an extract from the.
No, I'm just saying. Okay. Yeah, but remember.
So the context I'm trying to.
You know, by accident, I keep calling you Member Hunter. It's sort of a Freudian slip. No, let me just say why. Again, by necessity, what we're trying to do is to get any supplementary expenditure. Parliament needs to be advised as to how it was done. Quite frankly, we have been focusing, we had known about the 2 billion. I'm saying if there's an additional 1.7.
No, 1.17.
1.17. Yeah. Could you, you may not have it here, but certainly the members would need a breakdown of the 1.17.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, please be advised that the report that he is referring to was sent here to Parliament as well. Just forward here for information.
Does this 1.17, include the money that went to the members of Parliament for the patching program?
No.
Well, I will accept responsibility for the oversight, but I am not certain. Member Phillips, maybe you...
The 1.17 would have been work to do with the cleaning up exercise, the repairs on the bridges. It would include the 700 million that would have been budgeted for cleanup in St. Thomas too.
Yeah. So as I said before,
yes.
So this is the first, so this was the first report that was produced, and it covered period up to June, well, it says May 2017. And what that money was used to do was to pay for all the clearances, the road, the landslides, the block drains, and so on and so forth. It didn't address reconstruction.
All right.
Okay.
So then, Chair, I think we. But
Member Phillips, please, if you have a clarity, but I want to hear Mr. Hunter just give the overview, but I have Member Stuart Phillips. Well, Member Williams has left. Yeah, but I'm taking you first, or you're not finished. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm doing that now, but I'm just allowing Member Phillips so that he and then I have Member Terry Long after. So that's what I have here. Okay.
So as I was trying to explain, so the first program would have been the response to the floods, largely in Clarendon, St. Thomas, Portland, St. Mary, and to a lesser extent, St. Anne. And we got funds to pay for the cleanup, to repair the bridges, and $400 to do patching. $400 million to do patching, consequent on the catalog of roads that were impacted up to end of May 2017. So that program is on the ground, largely completed. And we have the information on how those funds were expended. But as you all know, the rains did not stop in June. The rains continued. So we subsequently lobbied the government for additional funds to undertake additional works. And hence the $2 billion, of which we have 1.3. So the Christmas work program that involved patching as well, again, is another complement. So there are three programs that are running almost simultaneously. The original program, which is which has its genesis in this, the Christmas program, which is a complement, and now this third program. Again, Chairman, we drive around. I look on my way here, Member Paulwell. You know, we're doing work on Windward Road, patching. Yeah. Now Bellevue nearby your office. Yeah. We're doing patching. We're doing patching. But yeah.
When I made the appeal recently that the government, and I really don't want to be parochial, but he mentioned Windward Road.
No,
right.
I'm just saying.
So no, there is supposed to be a rehabilitation program for Windward Road.
Which is this?
And
oh no, we have another program for you, you know.
Yes.
We have another. Yeah. We have another.
Yes. So why are you going to patch it? Yes. So why patch it then? Why not just go and do the rehabilitation work?
Again, Windward Road is a long road. I can look back and I can share with you. We've recently, the contract has been awarded. Member Paulwell, we've recently awarded a big contract for you. You're aware of that?
I don't want to hear about contracts being awarded. I want the road to fix.
All right, so that is on.
Yes.
Yeah. And we have just awarded a contract. And in fact, it was awarded in December.
So can you not patch it? Don't patch it. Just get that contract implemented.
Well, again, it's a judgment call we make. There are some parts of the road that need to be patched because it presents a clear and present danger. Presents a clear and present danger to traffic.
I still have the concern, though. How you justify $100 million in Northwest St. Andrew? Where's Ipsa Lockwood? No need to go on any further.
You know, in addition to what's in the NWA's portfolio, you also know that we have a responsibility for bus routes as well. So as long as it's a JUTC route, yeah. Oh yeah, but value, what's the value of Member Paulwell's big contract on Windward Road? Yeah?
Yeah. Well, that is hundreds of millions. Okay. Hundreds.
In respect of the concrete, yes, utilizing concrete Yeah. As you know as well, Member Paul, we, about 3 years ago, we did a section of Winwood Road in front of the cement company with cement, with concrete, and that has worked fairly well. There's concrete in Fern Gully and a couple other places. But really, to incorporate or to migrate from asphaltic concrete to Portland cement concrete, it's not so much a maintenance thing, it's more a construction thing, meaning that you're going to, you would need to be doing major rehabilitation where you take up whatever is there and replace it. So it lends itself to new road construction, or comprehensive rehabilitation. We are pretty satisfied in terms of the technology, that's not the issue. Years ago, the comparative cost profile showed cement roads, having a premium of about 40%. It has come down well. It has come down well in the last couple of years. It's probably in the 20s. Yeah. Right. And yeah. So it does. We have quite recently repaired the Charlton fording with collaboration between ourselves and cement company. So there's a certain amount of collaboration between ourselves and the cement company in terms of infusing more cement roads or portion of roads into our portfolio.
So Chairman, I would like to recommend, as one of the findings from this committee, is for us to do much more than just making these anecdotal stories about cement. And let us commission, if it's not yet done, a proper study, and if it's already done and revealed, let us recommend that we do some, if we cut the cost of road maintenance by moving towards greater use of cement.
Member Paul, in fact, this has already been done, and I don't know if you recall, but about 3 years ago, instructions were given by the government that when we're doing works of a certain size, then in the request for bids, the contractor should be given the option of making a cement portion. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's something that we will. But the research has already been done, and it's a settled matter in terms of utilization.
Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you to the hard-working Mr. Hunter. Mr. Hunter, you mentioned the fact that some of the roads are in this last tranche are not going as fast as you would have liked to because of the delinquency of some MPs. But I want to also touch on the fact that...
Sorry, sir. Those are your words. I don't want, when I leave here, to be besieged. But,
no, but you did say...
Let me use a euphemism. We want to see the program go as fast as possible, and I'm calling on the support and collaboration of all the MPs so that at the end of the day, we get the job done on time.
Thank you, sir. I'm certain that all MPs would love to see that level of efficiency. But, sir, some of us have some challenges that relate to payment to the NAA contractors. And some of them are reluctant in terms of getting the work started because they are not certain whether or not they'll be paid because, for example, Baba Green must be purchased bought up front. Okay. And that is always a challenge.
Let me settle that for you, Mr. Stewart. I have this lady in the purple, Mrs. Dunstan. Mrs. Dunstan, you see, no one is here from Ministry of Finance. Mrs. Dunstan tells me that we have a rather robust bank account as we speak. So for the first time, I can say, truthfully, I have no money problem. Yeah? As long as the work is done and done to our satisfaction and certified, payment is precipitous. I give you that as a commitment.
I'm happy to hear that, sir. Thanks very kindly for the reassurance. But I just want, Mr. Hunter, in the May rains, I had 2 pieces of roads in Pewsey Hill to St. Jago. That piece of road that collapsed. And Estimates were done, sent in by the parish, Manchester. Nothing has been done. We did get some rehabilitation work on the cross keys to Pusey Hill, the Bustle Lane in particular. You did expend some funds there, but the road is deteriorated again. And it seems as if we're going to be losing all that was put in. And I would love something to be said and something to be done about those two pieces of road there. The road that is collapsed and the Bustle Lane in particular. Those are of urgent need.
You can share that information with Mr. Stewart and I'll examine it. But let me just say that our response to a rain event, the usual response to a rain event, is precipitous clearance of blockages, then reconstruction. The truth is that we have not addressed reconstruction. All we've been concentrating on so far has been clearance of block roads and some patching of the sections of the network that were badly scoured and the repairs to bridges, because we take the view that if a bridge is not repaired in good time, then it can collapse and the cost then becomes much more than what you would have spent to reinforce the bridge. So I admit that we have not yet addressed reconstruction. The member there, we visited his significant breakaway in Linstead from the 16th of May. Yeah, but he has a huge breakaway. The road to Geisel, I mean, it just went. Okay. So we do know, Mr. Stewart, that the reconstruction needs to be addressed. And it is our hope that we will be provided with some funds in the new financial year for us to start the reconstruction. But what we're doing now is just the initial phase.
You're next after me.
No, hold on. No. Yeah.
I'm a little just stressed, and I've just mentioned to my friend, Member Jackson. We have a set of guidelines in the standing orders, and I regret to have to mention it again. We are delving into policy issues, and I don't believe that is within our remit.
Such as, just clarify.
May I just?
No, clarify which policy issues you're talking about.
As to why it is that the government has made the allocations it has made.
No. No, Member Campbell. How do you arrive at that, though?
Well, let me be very clear. May I just recite for us what it is that we are supposed to be doing under
Member Campbell,
Order
yes.
73A.
No, let me just say this. I'm not refuting that, but what I'm trying to understand. My understanding is that we have here an additional, a supplementary budget, which is going to do work which has not been informed, the Parliament has not been informed of. So what members are doing is asking two things: what work is being done, where it is being done, and what informed the judgment of it being allocated in those areas. Now I'm trying to understand what part of that is policy.
Repeat, Chairman, and I will not mention it again, that it is outside our remit. Because if I understand it clearly, and I'll just recite it. Order 73A, the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. And A, it says examining the budgetary expenditure of government agencies that the fulcrum of it sits here, to ensure that expenditure is done in accordance with parliamentary approval.
Exactly.
B, And there has been no expenditure.
No, member.
Monitoring expenditure as it occurs and keeping the Parliament informed of how the budget is being implemented. And C, inquiring into the administration of government to determine hindrances to efficiency and to make recommendations. And I think we are preempting the officers because they haven't started to do anything. All that has been done is that they have some allocations have been made and they haven't started doing anything. So I am at a loss because I must tell you that I don't know where to start in the inquiries because if it is to determine the hindrances
the committee is
hindering
the progress of the committee right now. Under normal circumstances, in the estimates of expenditure, you will have an outline of what is to be done, and it is laid out. What has happened in the supplementary? We have not gotten that. This is new expenditure. So what is happening to us is we are examining the expenditure and how they expect to do it. That is the role of the committee that does oversight of appropriations.
Chairman.
I think even what you read out sort of reinforces the very point that you were arguing against.
Chair.
So anyway, let me just, Member Phillips.
Yeah, I would like to know from Mr. Hunter then what would hinder any work being done. I'm asking what would hinder work being done between, well, the completion of that culvert that was on the Bustamante Highway, Maypen section, because that doesn't seem to be completed. And also looking at the list that you have provided, that corridor coming from the Highway 2000, where it exits at the roundabout there, well, you have here 4 parts to Whitney Turn, but I see nothing from there to even 4 parts, which is in a bad condition. I know some patching was done, but it was not adequate enough. And you spoke about major thoroughfares being taken care of in this. So since the member wants to know that, since the standing orders speak about hindrances, what would hinder you from completing that?
So I give you the assurance that there are no hindrances. That work on the Bustamante Highway will be finished when, Brian? It will be finished very shortly.
Please.
Yeah. So
it's a death trap as it is now.
Yeah.
It is a death trap.
It's taking too long. So
that's
we'll
the
finish
culvert there.
Yeah.
What about the
corridor?
Rehabilitation?
Again, Member Phillips, the NWA we get a certain percentage of the expenditure. So it is in my selfish interest to have as big a budget as possible, meaning that this is the money that we have. We've made some choices in terms of what needs to be done. I can say with 100% degree of confidence that every road section identified here for work is in need of work.
No.
Are there other road sections that are in need of work?
The reason why I mentioned that one, not because I traverse it on a weekly basis, but it was damaged in the first set of flood rains in what, April, May? In May. So I would imagine it would have been in that document
and if it is, it's been worked on a different program.
And then
remember I said
it would be.
It would be worked on a different program. So there are 3 different programs we have. We have this program, we have the Christmas patching program,
and
then
I'm
we have
sure
this
that
one.
is not on the Christmas patching.
Right, but I'm just saying there are 3 different programs which are now being run almost simultaneously.
All right.
But that will be addressed.
Secondly, when I looked at the breakdown of roads, and I would imagine that this list would have been started to be compiled before the last set of rains in Portland.
Right.
Is there any program, because, and I use specifically for the areas that I toured myself, that Berrydale area going up into the Rio Grande Valley, where
you have undermining of the roadway? And two, is there a program that is being looked at for river training? Because many of these roadways that I saw, especially in the Portland area, without any proper river training, it makes no sense to even repair the roadways. It may come into the next financial year, but is there a program that is being put together?
Good question, Member Phillips. The fact is that we do have a sum of money set aside to respond to rain events which have occurred since December and projected to take us into the new financial year.
Okay, so
I have that, and in fact,
member, have you been guaranteed the financing for that yet?
I have it in house.
You have
the money. I have it.
How much is that looking at? All right, let's see.
Yeah. But suffice it to say, we have made a reasonable projection of the impacts in Portland and St. Anne in particular.
Yes.
And we have funds set aside to address those. And I had dialogue with Dayton Campbell, for example, on that.
Yes.
Minister. So that's been taken care of separately.
Speaking about that one, Chair.
But before I get to that, but let me answer the Portland.
Yes, please.
Yes, we have gone out to Portland and we have looked at what has happened there, and we are doing the engineering for some of the works. But suffice it to say that on a previous occasion, I went to Portland with my team to look at similar things. And the truth is, if I'd known that they were taking me where they took me, I wouldn't go, because if something happens to you, it will take 6 months for them to find you. The truth is this, Mr. Chairman, while everything can be engineered, it comes at a cost. And we have to have a serious look in this country as to what it is that we're going to build. Who is going to pay for it? I mean, this whole settlement issue, where people choose to live, quite frankly, from a technical point of view, I see no great sense in spending $200 million to secure properties that value $2. I mean, the total tax take from Berrydale, I've been up to Berrydale, and quite frankly, the Rio Cobo River is here, the road is here. I mean, the kind of retaining structures that you would need to build to control the Rio Grande. I'm curious to know what is the revenue to the country from the rafting intake. I mean, just as an interested taxpayer this time.
But let's come a little closer then to the one in St. Anne that you mentioned in northwest St. Anne.
Yeah.
Right, where a new box culvert was installed. Yeah. And I know you
were going to ask
you
that.
know I was going to bring it up. No, but seriously though, Mr. Hunter.
Okay. Let me summarize. Let me summarize for you.
No, hold on. Yeah. Let me just say what I have to say first. And in just what your statement before, because if we're going to spend money on these repairs, it's not to just fix the problem in that immediate vicinity, but going down the river to see what training we need to do so that we don't have the problem coming back down, which in a sense, I'm imagining enough money was not given for that project, hence why we're still having damages done within the vicinity of the bridge.
You know, I read in the papers where, you know, a declaration was made that the culvert has failed or whatever. But as you know, that is not so. It's a box culvert.
No, not the culvert itself.
But what it is that we had a choice between, you know, doing reinforced concrete for the control section, the river training, or using gabion baskets. And we chose to use gabion baskets. Is a much less expensive solution. It's flexible. But take your point that
but gabion basket was done on one side and not on the other side. That was
if you recall, look, when we spoke about that program.
No, I know, but no, what I'm getting at, Mr. Hunter, and it's not a blame game who was right or who was wrong. It's just really, and it's a policy matter that when we are going to do repairs like that, that we don't just look at the immediate fix of the box culvert, but we look. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the river training budget?
No, but remember it has to do with expenditure too, because you have to go back over and spend on that bridge. I don't want to,
And member Phillips, to answer your question about the river training exercise, the budget for this financial year, for the whole country for river training, $54 million.
Not adequate.
Precisely.
No, I know, okay, but you see, the more the weather pattern changes, the more we have to look differently in how we do things. And it's just a point that I want to make.
And it's a very good point, and it's a point that we identified.
Finally, and it came to the request that was made from the chairman earlier on that 1.2 billion, and I asked the question if that had taken into consideration the expenditure of 700 million for St. Thomas, and your answer was yes.
700?
Yeah, from earlier, a budget of 700 million to deal with same rains and clearing up.
But St. Thomas didn't get 700 million.
And some $300 million have been spent out already.
I think, Member Phillips.
I'll get my information and then pass it on to you so that you can then respond to it. But it would be interesting to get a breakdown on the expenditure of that 1.1.
We have that. And there's nothing like that for St. Thomas.
I will share it with the chairman, and then he can ask the questions of the.
I think the upshot of that, though, is that we had indicated earlier that the 1.17 billion, which also was in the supplementary, if you could give us a breakdown, you probably have it, just so that we can get a chance to look at that. All right. Member Williams has departed. Member Terrell.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time and based on everything that has been said, I've perused the documents. I see no reason to detain these members any longer. The only thing I would add is that, and I see Mr. Hunt and Mr. Downer in front of me and Mr. Patterson as well, is that corridor, since I'm not seeing it here, I was told that it would have been considered in another, when we had the mid-P program, but what I would say to them is, coming off of the highway, the Dyke Road, coming across that main road, Christian Penn, going across the Gregory Park, going across the Newlands main road into Nagahead, it's still bad, to use the local parlance. So my only consideration, I've looked at what you have here, is that in the future, if we can find some funds, it's a main artery that stretches across Portmore, all the coasters and everybody that come across to go, and we've already had an accident where, a bus was swerving out of pothole and died and everything else and stuff. So I'm just asking if we can just get the funds. I know if you made the relevant representation, we can find the funds just to do that corridor because it's important for the residents. It really is a sore across the constituency. But gentlemen, thank you. Do have a great week, ladies, as well. Cheers.
Ms. Wallace.
Just one quick point. I would love NAA to give us some assistance in one regard. And this is something I felt very strongly since becoming a member of Parliament. I believe it is absolutely confusing for us to both look at how much money is spent in each constituency, which people do. They look and say, you get 40 million and I get 100 million and the other one get 10 million. It actually does not really make any sense looking at it that way, because my road network may be 1,000 kilometers of road and you have 10 kilometers of road. And as such, I would love for NAA to embark on a process of taking out the entire road network, measuring up and saying, this constituency have 500 kilometers of NAA road. This one has 10 kilometers. This one have 2 kilometers. And when we are designing our road program, what we have done is to give each constituency 10% of the road that you have. So if the member of parliament is being consulted, you can select out of your 500 kilometers of road network where you think the priority is, because all you're getting is 10%, and all the person on the opposition is getting is 10%. So at no point will we ever come and say 1/3 of the road to PMP and 2/3 of the road to here, because at the end of the day, Jamaicans traverse on the roads and traverse through constituencies, and a better way, in my estimation, of allocating is based on the volume of roads and the use of the roads by citizens going forward, if you can help us.
Member Holness.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Member Holness, I think that certainly this committee, it is something that we can recommend, that you look at the length of your NWA roads, that so that there's some ability to put things into the context. And I make a very valid point. I had indicated to Mr. Hunter, I'll tell you, a difficulty, for example, I have, and I take off my hat as chairman and put on that as member of parliament for Western Westmoreland. I have a rural constituency which is equal to you. The two of us have large constituencies. My constituency, and there are 63 constituencies, so you're about 16%, 15, 16%. Each constituency has. To date, in 2 years out of this program, I've gotten 1/4 of 1%. 1/4 of 1%. My total expenditure is $5 million. Now, I just don't know how, you know, and Westmoreland is known for rain. So I just don't know how we justify. So I've had a discussion with Mr. Hunter, certainly on areas, and indicated the Bath Mountain Road, which is of critical need. But the fact of the matter is that there is a difficulty when you have this sort of indication. And I think what Member Paulwell said, if we're able to come with some mechanism, there will always be a need when you have emergency, etc., to put things where there's a immediate need. But if in the general sense people feel that there is some equity, you will come out of the argument. Today we have had a discussion that the opposition constituencies get 1/3 and the government get 2/3. The fact of the matter is that persons across the length and breadth of the island pay taxes. It's not about who is their member of parliament, it's about them as taxpayers. And it is unfortunate when you then penalize somebody for how they voted. And
Chairman, no, you don't respond. Chairman.
No, please let me finish. I've listened patiently. Please, let me finish, please. And secondly, I think, member, that we have got to, and I mean, it was passed over, but something which we have got to address. When we were having our deliberations here, the bushing program some time ago, we had a discussion about how those programs must be done, especially around election time. It is an unfortunate thing. It's an unfortunate thing when, as a country, it is now becoming a norm for persons to say when you have a by-election, you get some sort of tilted expenditure. So you have a local government election, 600 million for bushing. And then we had that whole discussion about where it was and how it was. You go into Southeast St. Mary, and then you had the whole of that. And then now it is just, as was mentioned here, you have a by-election coming in Member Smith's constituency, and all of a sudden there's 100 million expenditure. I'm saying to you, these things will continue to be of concern to Jamaica and Jamaicans, that our electoral process is not being wrongly influenced by government expenditure until we put a proper mechanism in place that allows for things to be done properly. So I'm just saying, we at this committee the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, our job is to find ways to recommend to Parliament procedures that can allow for that. So I'm suggesting that at the end of this, that we look to ask the clerk for us to make our recommendations and include it on what we need to do to ensure that this perception is taken out of the minds of people.
Chairman, I actually wanted to add to that to improve the perception. For some of us on this side, after 18.5 years, the constituencies where money would have been spent based on the perception we have had about politics is not the constituencies that are run by the Jamaica Labour Party. I believe a good way for us to get that balance back is for the NWA, in doing the same process I discussed, to literally look at the road network and remove what is already repaired. It wouldn't have mattered if it was repaired under the JLP or under the PMP, because we have taken out of that road network what is good. And that now allows us, with whatever is bad, to have an equitable arrangement of spreading it across the board, regardless of who represent the respective seats.
Member Holders, I will agree with you, but I will also point out for you, in saying what you say, that roads have a finite length of time. You know, after 10 years with a lot of these local government roads, you start having to look at it 20 years at most. Please remember that in the last 10 years, the administration in power now has been in power 6 of those 10 years. So to call upon the longer history is not as relevant as taking what has happened in place. And I'm just saying to you, the one thing you recognize is right is right. Let us as a committee find a way to suggest to Parliament some policy procedures that, you know, justice must not just be done, but seen to be done. Let us take out of people's minds once and for all the fact that by-election does not mean BUY election. That government resources, there must be some way to ring-fence them at the periods of time that we go into by-elections and general elections.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, just to indicate that whilst I was campaigning in I believe, it was Southeast St. Mary, leading up to the election, I'm not aware of any road work that was going on. I'm not aware of any road that was going on before the by-election.
Yeah, I heard you didn't spend a lot of time in there, obviously.
No, one my PDs decisively. I'm just indicating that I don't think, I'm not aware of any, even the Junction Main Road thing, I didn't see anything going on.
Let us, I think, stick to the broad, basic principles on which we can agree.
But the other thing I must note, though, Mr. Chairman, with respect, is that without NWA bringing documents to say, listen, this road here, Marcus Garvey Drive, needs to be fixed, and Colomere Close, and Washington Mews, and this one and that, without NWA bringing that to say that this is why $70 million was spent in this particular constituent, and it is justified because the road in this state bad, again to revert to the vernacular, I think it is somewhat alarmist to say that, oh, well, 2/3 is here and 3/3 is there and this and that and 4/5 and whatever, without NWA, without looking at the documents to say, yes, $70 million was spent in this particular constituency, but the residents in this constituency, they have a particular need. I'll give an example. I'm doing 3 roads now in Cedar Grove. The people in Cedar Grove, they are taxpayers. For 20 years, that community has been neglected. Nothing was done in terms of roadway. For 20 years. Last year, I did Ponchina Drive. This year, I'm doing 3 roads, but because the residents need it. Not that other parts in East Central doesn't need road. They do, but for 20 years, this particular community was marginalized. We have to look at roads in Gregory Park as well, because for 36 years, Gregory Park was marginalized, so we have to do work. So the question is, what is the state of these roads? Why NWA spending 10 million here, 20 million there, 30 million there, without getting into that position where it comes across alarms to say, oh, but this is a GOP constituency and therefore money spent there. I just think we ought to be a bit more careful. Let them, ask them to justify why 90 million is being spent here or 30 million. Let them show you the roadworks, the network that justifies the spend before we say, oh, but this is GOP and on this PMP. That's all I'm saying. All right, have a blessed day.
Member Taylor, I think that, again, the broad principle, I get back to the fact that I'm still struggling with 0.25%. So when you find a way to justify that,
please, after 36 years, please, beg you do, come over.
All right, so members, I'm about to wrap up, and I see two members that just want to put in a last.
Just quickly, Mr. Hunter, to Mr. Hunter, Chairman. Mr. Hunter, can I have your attention, sir? As relates to a corridor road in Trelawney, I drove on it on Sunday. There has been a number of demonstrations. Schools have been disrupted because of the condition of the road network. From Falmouth to Wakefield to Dumfries.
That's a Martha Bridge.
Yes, awful condition for more than a year now. We have had several demonstrations. Schools have had to be closed down. And I have not seen anything in the document here that speaks to it. What is this position, sir, as it relates to the road rehabilitation in Wakefield to Falmouth, Wakefield to Dumfries, those two corridors?
Again, Mr. Stewart, the truth is that the country as a whole does not allocate enough funds for road maintenance. I mean, our needs for road maintenance on an annual basis probably is closer to about $6 billion. And maintenance is not something that one ought to do it's not periodical, but it shouldn't be a shock thing. There should be a cycle. When you design a road, asphalted concrete road, 7 years is what you're guaranteed. If you go beyond 7 years, then you're taking severe risk. 10 years. Most of our roads don't have drains. I mean, the road is the drain, yeah? Because the drainage is about half the cost of the road. So, meaning if you put in the proper drainage, you get half the distance in terms of smooth road. So, it is an expensive undertaking. There just is not enough money to go around. There's a need all over. So, what I said before is that I can testify to the need for what is here. I mean, there's no second guessing whether this needs to be done. The question is, I mean, are there other roads that need to be done? The answer is yes. So it's a question of what is it that we do next. We can't do everything. Every time we propose a program with a particular funding source, there's always disquiet regarding what is not touched. But it goes. Once this program is completed, then there's another program that will follow. And the equity issue is something that we are very conscious about, and this is something that we try to address. But it's a cycle, that we do.
Just close it out. Mr. Chairman, just to support what Mr. Hunter, CEO, mentioned, and he mentioned it in his initial statement, that in choosing some of these roads, because they are not looking at the constituency by constituency basis. They look at the needs. And a typical example is the road that is on the program for Member Phillips, which is a PMP constituency. But your constituency, hold on, no, but just listen. It's a public road. I am saying that road, yes, that road which is situated in his constituency is of more benefit to me from St. Elizabeth than him. I can tell you,
yes,
because most of the people from Junction
and
goes to Mandeville, and I have more, so I benefit more than you. Yes,
all right, members, member Holness, hold on, member Holness. Let me just say, members, two things, Member Phillips, two things. Number one, it is recommended next week that we would see the ministry with responsibility for agriculture. Okay? And we'll take them alone and do what we have to do with them and encompass the roads. And during the end of this week, we will send the recommendations of what we will do on the follow-up. We may take the week after off, as we had indicated, we take 1 week a month. And I would really close this meeting. I'm really a happy person today because, quite frankly, when we had that discussion about getting some parity, I smile at the thought of how many roads I will get to catch up with a member from East Rural. To be, I'll get a flood of roads in Western Westmoreland. So thank you. Let me thank the members of the Ministry of Economic Growth and the representatives from the NWA and for coming. I think it has been a very informative and a good discussion. And members, we may send out some recommendations. I think Member Holness and Member Paulwell, who had the discussion, maybe we need to just put some things and send around to members as to how we would move forward. And Member Hunter, I think that recommendation.
That is not a Freudian slip, Chairman.
It is now because, you know, I see more of him than I do. There's a member of the committee that I see less frequently. what we would like is I was actually referring to another member, a minister of state who is not here. But what we could do is if you could just give us an idea. I don't know how difficult it would be, but the kilometers of
the quality of the road network. So it would be good to do some assessment in terms of saying this road has 10 years left approximately. This road have 20 years left. This one have 30 years left. So we know almost that, okay, these don't need to be touched. So a final matrix that gives us a very equitable way of determining where we work here.
Member Jackson.
So a bit of housekeeping matter. I see that the minutes have me as absent in attendance, but present in participation. So
that's not unusual.
That's not unusual.
Yeah, it will be corrected. Members, I think we've had a good day today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, members. Meeting adjourned.
I must be the proudest Jamaican ever. And I am proud because I believe, I know that Jamaica is the nicest place on this earth. This beautiful country, just live in peace and harmony, walk and talk with the neighbor, tell them morning and don't feel like say, of course we are them. I would love for it to be the Jamaica that I think is the best place on earth. Come make we create a safer Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
Parents, how do you think your children feel when they are beaten?
I feel so sad when my mother beats me. It makes me feel so angry.
I feel embarrassed, and I feel like you just don't care.
It has been proven that coercive parenting is directly linked to the aggression your children are displaying in schools. The National Parenting Support Commission is imploring you, parents, rethink your actions. Stop beating your children.
A message from the National Parenting Support Commission in collaboration with Ministry of Education, Youth and Information for improved safety and security in schools.
Now that you're speaking out, do more. Do more. Help fight crime. Do the right thing and report what you know. Do the right thing and publicly demand change. Hold government accountable for better governance. Protect your environment and health. Do the right thing and keep your community clean. If we all do the right thing and build integrity, Jamaica will be the place to live, work, raise families, and do business.
Since 2009, the FAO and the government of Brazil, through an international cooperation program, have carried out several activities in Latin America and the Caribbean countries in order to strengthen school feeding programs. This is how the project Strengthening of School Feeding Programs in Latin America and the Caribbean was launched, designed based on the lessons learned in Brazil, a country with more than 60 years of experience with school feeding programs. The aim of the cooperation is to contribute to the development and strengthening of school feeding public policies, with an emphasis on the human right to food, based on the supply of healthy, continuous, universal, and sustainable foods in schools, as well as on food and nutrition education. The project started in 5 countries and has expanded its actions over the years. Currently, 13 countries are participating in the project: Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Grenada, Guatemala, Guyana, Honduras, Jamaica, Paraguay, Peru, Dominican Republic, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For the execution of the project, elements of sustainability for school feeding programs were discussed and defined with the technical support of experts for sustainable school feeding programs from governments, universities, and international organizations. In order to ensure a sustainable school feeding program, a SFP, the commitment of local governments in promoting the school feeding agenda and the intersectoral and interinstitutional coordination with other policies of education, health, social and economic development, among others, is essential.
Una nueva experiencia que nos junta a varios ministerios y al mismo gobierno regional con el fin de preocuparnos por la niñez en su etapa formativa.
In this regard, through the support of the project Strengthening School Feeding Programs, technical, intersectoral, and interinstitutional school feeding committees have been created in the countries of the region. These committees constitute a solid basis for the sustainability of the actions carried out in the municipalities.
Nos organizamos en primer lugar docentes, padres de familia y alumnos. Todos juntos hemos formado el Comité de Alimentación y Refrigerio Escolar.
The involvement and participation of the different actors, such as parents, students, the school, and the local community, is very important in decision-making. The first step for the implementation of a school feeding program is that each country recognizes its importance and that the program design, concepts, principles, and guidelines are based on the analysis and evaluation of the country's reality, structure, and local context. Based on this design, the SFP funding at medium and long term must be guaranteed annually. It is even advisable that it be done through specific school feeding laws and the participation of local governments.
Esto pues lo hemos adoptado nosotros como una política en el tema de seguridad alimentaria y nutricional. Ha permitido entonces a nivel de los gobiernos locales celebrar acuerdos municipales para que estos queden vigentes durante el tiempo y que los diferentes gobiernos puedan tomarlos como prioridad dentro de los programas de gobierno municipales.
This will allow securing the necessary resources for the different school feeding program components, such as the adoption of healthy menus, improvement of school infrastructure, such as dining areas, kitchens, and storage rooms, along with staff training and the implementation of food and nutrition education in a comprehensive manner. In terms of legal frameworks, with the support of the project and the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Honduras have developed and approved their school feeding laws.
Así que para nosotros ha sido un avance muy valioso poder concertar a nivel político la promulgación de una ley que ha permitido delinear y concretar este programa de alimentación escolar y control sanitario. Y además, al establecerlo desde ese marco, con esa fuerza legal, nos permite también ir forzando una mejora en los presupuestos, atendiendo que este tipo de servicios son servicios bastante costosos para un presupuesto que no pasa del 4% del PIB en nuestro caso, siempre centrado en los gastos rígidos, en gastos asociados al servicio educativo. Para nosotros es un gran avance.
Other countries are discussing and drafting their bills. which even promote local public purchases. And in the Caribbean, the institutionalization of the Regional Parliamentary Forum is in progress. For the development of a sustainable school feeding program, the project also highlights the importance of providing healthy and adequate meals in terms of quality and quantity that are culturally appropriate and aligned with the school pedagogical proposal. To develop a quality menu, the first steps are to conduct a study on the nutritional status of the students and to develop a nutritional plan which will guide, among other things, what to do, which foods to buy, and the amounts for each student. All these actions are implemented with the support of nutritionists who also are responsible for training and guiding volunteer mothers in the preparation of food.
No, ahora comemos mejor, porque ahora todo es más saludable, es más rico.
From the menus designed by nutritionists, the project Strengthening School Feeding Programs has encouraged the purchase of foods directly from local family farmers. The project has supported the analysis of legal frameworks for local purchases and has also produced manuals to guide this process effectively and efficiently. The coordination between local governments, family farmers, associations, and cooperatives has also been strengthened in order to guarantee the buying and selling process of products. This successful coordination resulted in direct purchases from family farming for school feeding in several Latin American and Caribbean countries.
Nosotros estamos siempre dispuestos a seguir trabajando porque los ingresos son más, ¿verdad? Porque necesitamos que nuestras familias se desarrollen.
In this twin-track strategy, everyone wins. The school children who receive healthy meals with fresh, diversified, and locally produced foods, and the local family farmers who have a guaranteed market to sell their products, strengthening the local economies and increasing their incomes.
Desde el punto de vista económico, a las familias, impacta también desde el punto de vista del desarrollo económico del país e impacta desde el desarrollo educacional de los estudiantes.
Saber de que nosotros podemos producir con una seguridad de un aprovechamiento de un mercado que lo tenemos seguro, que lo tenemos en las mismas comunidades, el dinero que se rota acá, aquí queda, ¿verdad?
To be considered as a program, it is also important to implement food and nutrition education actions as a school component in a continuous and comprehensive manner. The educational school gardens are important strategies that are part of the food and nutrition education actions. Up to 2015, more than 700 educational school gardens have been implemented with the project's support. In addition, trainings and resource materials have been developed to support teachers in how to use the gardens as a learning tool.
Los huertos escolares ocupan un lugar relevante en el aprendizaje dentro de la formación de los niños y las niñas en el sistema educativo nacional.
The knowledge and experience accumulated by the project have shown that all this is possible because the local stakeholders have had the opportunity to discuss, think, and construct knowledge about school feeding.
La huerta a nivel, en el sentido pedagógico, permite que los niños pongan en práctica todas las materias.
Various trainings have been developed in the countries with the participation of public managers, teachers, students, professionals, and technical staff working in areas related to school feeding. Since the project began, more than 7,000 persons have already participated in courses, technical tours, experience exchange trips, seminars, and other knowledge-building activities. In order to generate knowledge, studies, training guides, food procurement manuals, and other teaching and learning materials have been developed at the country and regional level, which present a local perspective and possible strategies towards a sustainable SFP. In several countries of the region, the positive results obtained with the project support can already be seen. Together with the countries, the methodology of the Sustainable Schools has been built with the aim of building, in conjunction with governments and the local communities, a reference of schools that develop sustainable school feeding programs. Since 2012, the Sustainable Schools Initiative has already been implemented in 1,640 schools, with the participation of 150,305 students. Additionally, 5,600 family farmers are selling their products to school feeding programs. The infrastructure of 75 kitchens, 73 storage rooms, and 53 dining areas have been renovated. To promote the various activities undertaken by the project, important partners have also provided support, such as the embassies of Brazil in the countries, the Parliamentary Front Against Hunger, other UN agencies, as well as other projects implemented by FAO. There are still many challenges to overcome. Increase the number of countries in the region with new designs of sustainable SFP. Continue promoting actions to implement legal frameworks of school feeding programs in countries that have not yet made progress in this area. Expand the Sustainable Schools Initiative so that they impact the local school feeding policy. Discuss and strengthen mechanisms of community participation and monitoring. Coordinate school feeding with other themes developed by FAO, such as food loss and waste, gender, inclusion of fish in school feeding, and climate change. Several countries have shown that strategies for overcoming poverty must be based on intersectoral coordination, territorial development, and the articulated search for solutions by the various actors. Moreover, they have shown that these programs are essential to ensure the achievement of many of the Sustainable Development Goals. The provision of healthy, adequate, and local foods, linked to activities of food and nutrition education, constitutes an important tool for the effective implementation of the human right to adequate food. Ensuring the right to healthy food contributes to the sustainable development of all people.
Did you know that in a recent survey done by the OCA in schools across Jamaica, 43% of the students received inappropriate messages from strangers? The OCA wants you to be smart online. Never speak to persons you don't know. Parents, encourage your children to be social but be smart.
This message was brought to you by the Office of the Children's Advocate with support from UNICEF.
We know times are hard, but can selling your vote really make a difference in your life? How many of them even remember you and your community? What you need is opportunity for yourself and for your children. Don't sell your vote. It is illegal. Respect your vote. Vote for opportunity. A message from USAID Comet 2, NIA, and partners.
If you have information about illegal guns, call 311. Get the Guns, an initiative of the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
I'm very, very satisfied that we have another very smooth start to another school year. Today's grant signing is but the latest bilateral cooperation project for the education sector. There was also an award of contract approved for the amount of $99 million for the construction of a fifth form block at the Mount St. Joseph Catholic High School.
Today is indeed a very proud day in the ministry and certainly in the Safety and Security Department.
All students in primary and secondary for the first time who are on the PATH program, the government of Jamaica will be paying your personal insurance up to 8 subjects for CSEC.
I am pleased to announce that in line with the surplus generated by the Heart Trust NTA last year, the entity is increasing its provision to the Student Loan Bureau by 100%.
Today's launch is among the latest in our series of reforms to the education sector.
I'm delighted to welcome you all to the launch of the curriculum for students with moderate to profound intellectual disabilities.
An oversight committee headed by Professor Maureen Sands-Vaughan has been recently established to oversee the development of a comprehensive strategy to revitalize the vision for Jamaican children 8 years and younger.
Believe in yourself? You know you're going to do well?
We have had a very, very good year where we have seen improved results in all the exams that we have reported on this year.
This is a merger that looks at in a very real way, how can you become more efficient? And how can you expand the reach of our child protection services?
The CCMS, as we call it, brings everything our social workers need to do into one place.
We are collectively giving birth to 3 social media manuals, which have as their primary focus the task of helping our children stay safe whilst in cyberspace. Today, we present to you the newest public education initiative of the office, Aria's Story.
Through this partnership, Facebook will be ensuring that once a child is reported missing and comes into an alert system, the information will appear automatically on the pages of its Jamaican users. This is about how can we ensure that our children who are in state care have the best quality service. We want to say to our young people, invest in yourself, be somebody of value, be someone who can give back to your community.
Lifelong learning will now be fully advanced through the merger of JFLL, NYS, and the Heart Trust NTA.
Cabinet also approved the final draft of the National Youth Policy. The National Digital Switchover Steering Committee met on the 1st of June this year, and a presentation from its technical committee was received. The substantive work being carried out by this committee will guide Jamaica in its digital switchover process which is targeted to take full effect in 2021.